సుబ్బు
మేడం చెప్పండి.
సుబ్బు మరి వాళ్ళకి మేడం గారు అన్నారు, మీనాక్షి గారు, మేడం నా పని ఏం లేదు కదా, మీరు కంటిన్యూ చేసేయండి, నేను ఎప్పటికప్పుడు జాయిన్ అవుతాను అన్నారు వాళ్ళు.
ఓకే మేడం. మరి జోయల్ గారు మేడం, జోయల్ ఓకే
గారు వచ్చేసారుగా, వచ్చేసారు. జోయల్ గారు వచ్చేసినట్టున్నారు. సుబ్బు చూడు,
జస్ట్ ఇప్పుడే ఎంటర్ అయ్యారు మేడం.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Joel.
How are you doing?
We are very fine. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited.
Very good morning.
Yeah. Well, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yep. So, can you hear me okay? Is the audio good?
Morning, Joel.
How are you doing?
We are very fine. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited.
Very good morning.
Yeah. Well, good evening.
Yes, good evening.
Yeah.
మేడం ఇంకా 4 minutes ఉంది.
అమ్మ సుబ్బు, మనం ఎవరికి వినపడం కదా? వినపడుతున్నాం. ఓకే, వచ్చిన మెసేజ్ పెడతాను చూడు. Shall we start? 51 participants, Shubhu.
Is my audio okay? Can you hear me okay?
Quite right.
All right, perfect.
Your audio is quite right, Joe.
Good.
Very nice joining us.
Yeah, like I said, I'm excited to be here. I think I have a lot of good information to give out, so I'm excited.
Yes, yesterday you joined us.
For a little bit, I was actually working, so I was kind of going back between the webinar and my work, but I was able to see a little bit. Yeah, it was really good.
Okay.
I got to see Amita present for a little bit.
Amita presented.
Yep.
So we have to start. So the participants, we are waiting for the participants to have more participants.
Okay.
We like to have more participants, that's all. Subbu?
Shall we start?
Shall we start, Subbu?
Start.
Subbu, shall we start?
Okay, start, ma'am.
How many have joined us?
58, ma'am.
It's so 10, 11 people have entered waiting room.
I'm
It's
admitting.
saying,
16.
okay, okay.
Admitting.
Okay, shall I start?
Start, ma'am.
Any prayer song for us today at least?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, okay, leave it. So I'm starting. So very good morning to Joel and very good evening to all of us. For today's gathering, thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. And we are very much pleased to be able to welcome those of you that have been with us for a long time. And now, as well as those who are new to this session, our mutual passion helps us all unite and we could create a great energy today also. We need you as much as you need us, and that's why we are obliged to have you join us. I hope today's session will also be amusing and full of learning and more helpful to grow. As an organizer of this conference, I want to say one thing to all our accomplished audience, that time is the most valuable thing in our life. We cannot keep the time, but we can use it. We all feel that we got much time to do things for the reason that the time is available for all of us without any price to pay. As because it's free, we cannot estimate its price and its value. Another thing I want to say is time flies. However, we are the pilot of that flight. As we are the ones who spends our own time, we can multiply your wealth, but you cannot buy time. And one more very important thing is time and teacher. They both teach us. The difference is teacher teaches lesson and takes exam. The difference is teacher teaches lesson and takes exam. But time gives exam and teaches the lesson. Time gives exam and teaches the lesson. Finally, we should not regret for doing things. That is the most dangerous thing in life. Finally, we have to evaluate ourselves in plans to utilize our precious time. This day we are with Joel Volkert, an experienced English and Spanish teacher, and Dr.Meenakshi Barad, Assistant Professor of English, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. Now I welcome Joel Volkert to give a good interaction with us. Welcome, Joel. Very good morning, Joel.
Very good evening to you all as well. And thank you so much, Ms. Bhavani, for the invitation. I appreciate it. I know that we are having a few people that are joining us as we continue, so that's totally fine. I am going to start by sharing my screen. And if you can all let me know. Once you see my screen. Okay. Okay. So, like I said, my name is Joel Volkert. What I'm going to be talking about today is the basic principles for developing listening and speaking. So first of all, I'd like to start by thanking VSM College. I'm very honored to be here today. I'm very excited to share a lot of tips about listening, about speaking, sharing some advice that I've learned over the years of teaching, and having the ability for you to ask questions sort of towards the end, so that you know, any questions that you have, I'll be able to address after we go through this presentation today. So just a little bit of an introduction about myself. So I do have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction. I got my bachelor's degree in sociology and Spanish. As Ms. Bhavani mentioned before, I am bilingual. So I do speak 2 languages. I speak Spanish and I speak English. I have over 10 years experience teaching English, and I have over 5 years of experience teaching Spanish. Now, I think that's something important because I understand what it's like to have to think in another language, to have to speak and listen and read and write and dream and everything in another language. So I do understand that, and I think that's part of why I'm presenting today, is that I can explain things in a way that I think you will find very, very helpful, because you have 2 different languages that you're working with. I also have experience as a career coach, helping people finding jobs, looking for work and interviewing and things like that. Currently, I am a software consultant for a company here in Austin, Texas, in the United States. We do actually have an office in Chandigarh in India, so I haven't been there yet, but I'm hoping one day I can make it out to India. I would love to visit. And then finally, in 2017, I formed my own tutoring business. It's called Learn Now, Learn Well, and it focuses on English tutoring and online courses. And so let me just explain a little bit about what that organization is. Okay, so what we do is we focus primarily, again, like I said, on English, things like vocabulary, grammar, reading, writing, listening comprehension, as well as speaking, working on pronunciation and accents. And a lot of this I'm going to be covering today. Some information about culture, tutoring, and online courses. So what we're going to be talking about today specifically is we have a few things. So first of all, the theme of this presentation is improving listening and speaking skills. Okay, that's a very, very general topic. And so what I've done is I've sort of narrowed it down to what I think are the most critical things to improve your fluency and your listening and speaking skills. So first, I'm going to talk about fluency, what that is, things that affect fluency, and I'm going to give some activities, ideas to how to promote fluency within the classroom itself. Now, I know that there are a lot of students on this presentation and webinar today. I also know there's a lot of instructors on the webinar today. So what I'm going to do for my presentation is I'm going to give it general information, and I'm also going to give some information that is going to help instructors specifically like this with activities in the classroom. Next, I'm going to talk about speaking ability, how to improve your vocabulary, your grammar, your pronunciation. And then we'll take a look at listening comprehension. How do you improve your listening skills? How do you understand when English is spoken slowly or quickly, or by someone in the United States or England or Australia? So I'll give you some tips and some suggestions on how to improve your listening skills. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about goal setting. What are your goals for learning English? How do you achieve those goals? And then I have a list of references to share with you. So some helpful resources, some websites and tools that I think will help you even after this webinar for the future, so that you can continue to improve your English. And then, like I mentioned, there will be a time for Q&A. You'll have time to ask questions at the end of the presentation today. So what I want to do is I want to start by asking you all a question. Okay, so when thinking about English, on average, how many hours do you spend speaking English every single day? On average. So if you could please put your comments in the chat, I can take a look at them there. Okay, so I'm seeing some ranges: 1 hour, 2 hours, 8 hours. Okay. 6, 7. Okay, 6. Not more than 1. Okay, just a few minutes. And then someone pointed out at college, but never at home. And then another person pointed out, it depends on the situation. Okay, so thank you all for your comments there. I think that's very it's very interesting. Some people said, you know, I speak a few minutes every day. Other people said I speak up to 8 hours every single day. Depending on your situation, and this is something I'll talk about in just a minute, but depending on your situation, you might want to speak English for 8 hours a day, but you might not have that opportunity to do so. Okay, so again, like I said, I'm going to give you some advice, some suggestions on how you can improve your speaking abilities, even if you don't often have time to do that. If you can speak English at work, that's excellent. It's free practice for you. You're getting paid because you're at work, and you're increasing your speaking abilities. However, like I said, not everyone has that ability necessarily. So I strongly encourage those of you who, you know, maybe you say I speak about 1 hour a week, or 1 hour a day, I want to speak more. Just do as much as you can. Even 1 hour every single day, that's going to help you improve your English over time. Okay, next, I want to talk a little bit about what fluency means. Now, a lot of times when people think of the word fluency, they think of speaking. They say, well, I'm fluent in English. I can speak English very, very well. Now, that's true, but personally, I think fluency also includes listening. So take this example. If you're speaking to someone, let's say that you speak English super, super well, but your listening is not very good. That's uneven, right? Because you have my speaking ability is up here, but my listening is down here. So it's difficult to find that connection between the two. And so that's why personally, I would say fluency is a combination of speaking and listening. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today, because as you improve your speaking or listening, you should improve them together. That's the best way to improve your English overall, is by doing both, by practicing speaking and listening. Listening is much easier, especially for a lot of your situations. It's a lot easier to hear English than to speak English. But nonetheless, if you can do both at the same time, that is the best and quickest way for you to learn English. Okay, so a big question is, how long does it take to become fluent? I want to be completely fluent in English. How long is that going to take me? Well, the answer is, it really depends. It depends on a lot of information. It depends on a lot of situations, and I'll explain those in just a second. First of all, and this is going to be good, especially for a lot of those instructors that are on the webinar today, this is kind of a theoretical piece. And this goes back to the kind of sort of history of second language learning and how to become proficient or fluent in a second language. Now, there's a man named Jim Cummins. He's a linguist. A linguist is someone who studies languages. And he came up with what he calls BICS and CALP. So as you can see, BICS refers to basic interpersonal communication skills. What's important here is focusing on the word basic, because that means just general conversation. So can you have a conversation if you're speaking to someone in English, just talking about your day? Hi, how are you? How was your day? Did you have a good weekend? What did you do? That's very sort of basic English conversation. And Jim Cummins, he says that that takes anywhere from about 6 months to 2 years. Now, again, you might be learning English for several years, and you still might want to improve that. And that's okay. We're just saying on average, it takes about 6 months to 2 years. Okay, so that's the basic English conversation. The more advanced one is what we call cognitive academic language proficiency. So think of this like your classes that are in English, or if you've taken another, maybe an online course in English or a webinar in English, those are what we consider CALP, that academic language proficiency. As you can imagine, those academic, those professional words and phrases, they're a lot more advanced, so they're going to take longer for you to feel completely comfortable in using that language and in being fluent academically in English. Therefore, Jim Cummins says that it takes on average about 5 to 7 years to become completely fluent in academic language proficiency. Okay. Now, again, there's a lot of things that affect how fast you move, how fast you learn English, or how slow you learn English. Okay. But again, I want to sort of address this right now, just so that you all understand. If you think, well, I've been learning English for a long time, I just want to get better and better. And that's why I say to you, practice. Practice makes perfect. And the more you practice, the faster you will achieve the basic interpersonal skills and that cognitive academic language. Okay, now I mentioned there are a lot of factors that affect learning English as a second language. So first of all, a major factor is your education level. Specifically, what I mean by that is, when did you start learning English? If you start learning English when you're 4 years old and you practice every day of your life, you're going to improve a lot faster, right? If you start learning English when you're 54 years old, it's going to be a different situation, and you're going to have to work in a different way than if you're a child learning English. Okay. Now, all of you listening here today, you all started learning English at a different time, right? Some of you learned it maybe in school. Some of you might be speaking it at home or with friends or other family. Some of you, like you mentioned in the chat, some of you speak it at work, right? So there's a huge range of where and how often people are able to speak English. And again, today I'm going to give you some tools and some advice about, no matter what, if you speak it at work, if you speak it at home, you can still speak and you can still practice. A second major factor is access to English. How often do you listen to or speak or read or write in English? If you don't have someone to speak to in English, you can still read in English, you can still write in English, you can still listen in English. And so the reason I keep bringing up those four, reading, writing, listening, and speaking, is because generally in sort of the English world and language, those are the big four categories of English: reading, writing, listening, speaking. And that's what this webinar is focused on. Yesterday, you heard reading and writing, information and tools. And today it's listening, speaking. It's a lot of fluency that I'm presenting to you today. Okay, so again, access to English. You can still practice even if you're by yourself, even if you have no one to speak with. Finally, one other thing to consider is, what kind of English are you exposed to? And I'll talk about this a little bit more in a few minutes, but what I mean by that is, if you're, like, for example, if you're an instructor, right, and you're teaching English, you're probably going to hear English all day long. That's your job, that's your profession. You're hearing it, you're speaking and reading and writing it. Other people, they might only have that 1 hour a day, and it might just be, maybe it's texting. Maybe they're texting their friends, and so it's still English, but it's a very different kind of English than that academic, like we just saw, that those basic vocabulary phrases versus those academic phrases that are a little bit more professional. Okay, another question for you all. When do you feel most comfortable speaking English? With who or in what situations do you feel most comfortable speaking English? Okay, in class, with students or friends, at home. Okay, sometimes it can be a little bit scary when you're in public with other people. At college, texting. Okay, with people you know or with friends. When you're teaching, okay, excellent. Okay, when we are confident, very good answer. I'm going to be talking about that in just a second. Okay, with your parents, with your family. Okay, all right, another good answer. Yeah, when not in the spotlight. So again, you guys, it's like you're predicting what I'm going to be talking about. This is perfect. Okay, excellent. So thank you for your comments there. And so the reason I ask this is because I want to talk about something called an effective filter. Now, probably most of you have not heard this term because it's something that's not used very often, and that's okay. I don't expect you to learn this, to know what this word means, okay? But essentially, effective filter, it means your nervous level when you're speaking English. In other words, how comfortable are you when you're speaking English? Are you nervous, like someone said, when I'm in public or when I'm in the spotlight, when people are all looking at me? Probably when you're presenting in class. That's a perfect example. You have to give a presentation to everybody and you're a little bit nervous. And what we would say is that you have a high effective filter. That means that it's a high level of being a little bit nervous, okay? It's completely normal. It happens to everybody. But again, I want to just explain a little bit more about why this is important. Why is it important how nervous you are when you're speaking English? Okay, the reason being is because, again, like I said, if you're more nervous, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to produce in English versus if you're more calm, okay? So for example, your environment. A lot of you said, I prefer speaking English, or I'm most comfortable when I'm talking with my family or my friends. Some of you said when you're in class, maybe with your classmates. Some of you said when you're teaching, okay? So maybe that's your area, that's your, we sort of say like your vibe. That's where you feel most comfortable in speaking English, okay? Who you're talking to is also extremely important. You might be talking to your friends when you're in class. That's very different from giving a presentation in class, okay? So who you're talking to, or your professor, maybe you have to give a talk or a presentation or something to the professor specifically. That's going to be a little bit different than talking to your friends. Another important factor is the topic or theme, okay? Now, if I ask you, I want you to tell me about, let's see, like the effects of the coronavirus on the economy in India. Okay, well, some of you might say, yeah, I'm interested in that. Some of you might say, that sounds very sort of advanced. I don't know if I want to do that. Okay, but that's going to be that CALP, that academic language proficiency, versus if I ask you, tell me about your day. What did you do today? That's a very different kind of topic. You feel a lot more comfortable. You know what you did, you know the vocabulary, and that's going to lower your effective filter. And so you're going to feel more comfortable speaking with the person about how your day was. And finally, assessment. Are you getting a grade or are you getting a mark for your presentation? If you're giving a presentation in English for your class, you'll probably receive some sort of grade for it, or maybe an assessment. If you're talking with your friend about what you did that day, you're not going to, there's no repercussion. There's no effect if you make a mistake. If you make a mistake with your friend, it's fine, it doesn't matter. If you make a mistake when giving a big presentation, that might affect the assessment, okay? So again, to kind of summarize, those factors with effective filter: your environment, the situation that you're in, who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and then finally, what happens as a result of your conversation. So again, here's another graphic that might help you. Okay, so you want to try to have that low effective filter. Okay, so again, if it's a low effective filter, you're happy, you're relaxed, you don't have to think quite as fast, and when you are more relaxed, it's a lot easier for you to speak in English. And so again, a lot of you just said that in the chat, when you're talking with your family and friends, that makes sense. You know them, you care about them, you feel comfortable around them. And so I'm guessing that you probably are more likely to sort of experiment using new vocabulary words. You're not as afraid to make a mistake. You say, it's okay if I make a mistake with my friends. That high effective filter, the guy who's shaking with the water, that's when you're very nervous. You're thinking very fast. You're a little more cautious. you might be more afraid to use different vocabulary words or phrases. And sometimes what happens when you have a high effective filter is you start to doubt certain things about yourself. And so what I mean by that is, let's say that you learned a new word in English or a new phrase, okay? You're speaking with your friend about it, and you say, I'm going to practice using this new phrase. Okay, excellent, great. I'm not nervous. If I make a mistake, that's fine. However, even if you know that same phrase, if you're giving a presentation, you might not use that because you're more nervous. You say, I don't know if I'm going to use this correctly. I don't think I really want to use that this time. Okay, so again, as you see, you always try for a low effective filter, and you try to avoid that high effective filter. And you can do that through practicing. If it's a presentation, you practice over and over again. If it's new vocabulary, practice with your friends, write it down. That's a great way to practice it. Just write it down, do some sentences, and then that way you'll feel more comfortable when you speak and are talking with others and using that word. Okay. One final thing I'll say, just kind of a little anecdote, a story from myself personally. So I was lucky enough to study abroad in Madrid in Spain, and I loved it. I was there for 6 months. It was amazing. But I also had to speak in my second language, in Spanish. So I remember in class one day, I had to give a presentation, and all I had to do, I just had to read. I had to read from a piece of paper. It was that simple. But I was so nervous. I looked like this guy. My hands were shaking with the paper. And so what I did, I had to put the paper on the table, and I put my hands behind my back because my hands were shaking so much. And it's funny now when I look at it, because I think all I had to do was read from a piece of paper. But I was so nervous. My effective filter was so high that because everybody was looking at me because it was my second language. Okay. Now, again, like I said, if you practice more and more, and you use those words and you use your grammar, your effective filter will go down and you will improve your English. Okay, some teaching tips for all of those instructors here today. What I recommend, and this is what I've done in my own classes that has been helpful, is including sort of fun activities for students to practice in class, specifically around their speaking abilities. Have students choose certain games or topics of discussion. Now, I know this might depend on your class. Maybe you don't have time to do a lot of this, but even just a few minutes, maybe at the beginning of the day, so that effective filter lowers a little bit. One thing I found very effective with my own students was beginning with what I call the daily discussion topic. So in other words, what you do is you as the instructor or a student, you choose a discussion topic, and then students can talk with another classmate or in a group just for about 5 minutes about that topic. Okay, so it can be something related to maybe what you're talking about in class that day or what you talked about the previous class. And then what you can do is after they discuss in their small groups, you talk about it together as partners, or excuse me, as a class. Okay, so you sort of say, okay, tell me what did you guys talk about? And then that's a perfect way for you to be able to have kind of a low effective filter, just an easy discussion in English to practice all those words that you're using. Okay, so in summary, fluency, as I mentioned, it's improved through both speaking and listening. We have to think about the kind of English that you're practicing. Is it that basic or is it advanced language? Do you have an effective filter? Is it high? Is it low? And then again, practice different low stress speaking activities to help with your comprehension and speaking abilities. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more specifically about speaking. Okay, so I mentioned before about BICS and CALP, basic versus academic. So here's an example of academic vocabulary. So namely textbooks or news articles, things like that. So as you take a look at these two kinds of academic vocabulary, the first is quantum physics. I don't know if there's anyone who studies quantum physics. It's interesting, but it's very advanced. Even for me, I teach English. That's part of my job. And even some of these words are still very, very advanced for me. This second example, it's about offshore wind. This is something I got from a news article from Forbes magazine. And even though it's something a little more public, there's still a lot of academic and professional vocabulary that is a little bit more advanced, okay? So again, like I said, as you read through these articles or advanced texts, that does help you to improve your academic and professional vocabulary, which in turn you can use when you are speaking, whether it's a presentation or if you're speaking with your professor, for example. On the other hand, we have slang. Okay, many of you, I'm sure you use, you use your phones to text your friends. Maybe you have friends in other countries even, maybe in the United States. And so a lot of times when you text each other or when you're talking with your friends, you use what we call slang vocabulary. So that's very informal language. It's also what you hear, for example, in movies or on TV. I have two examples here. The one on the left, this is something, it's a little bit exaggerated, but this is what you might hear in the United States, for someone who's speaking a lot of slang vocabulary. On the right-hand side, this is a sample text conversation back and forth between two people. So let me just kind of translate this for you. If you can translate this already, that's excellent. If not, it's okay. So this person is saying, yo, what up? Which means like, hi, what's up? How's it going? NMU, that means not much. You. Chillin', that means like relaxing, kind of bored. And then LOL, I'm sure it's something that you use, but it means laugh out loud, not too much to do, so I'm not doing a lot. Where are you? I'm at home, I just got back. Where are you? Me too, I'm at home. Okay, now, I know this is a little bit different of an example, but I just want to show you that huge range of vocabulary, right? We have quantum physics vocabulary all the way down to simple text messaging. And all of that is important. That's all English, right? That's all English that you're improving, that you're practicing. And so, like I said, any English that you can practice, that's all good experience for you. Okay, a few more teaching tips. One thing I strongly recommend is called pre-teaching. And so what that means is giving a list of important and possibly new vocabulary words for students before they do a certain reading. Okay, so if they had to read that quantum physics article, you might want to present them with a list of difficult words and give them definitions or examples. And that's a way to help them have that sort of knowledge before starting class or before they do their assignments. So you're sort of giving them some extra support so that they can feel more comfortable and confident when they do their activity. And then examples. I'm trying to give as many examples as I can because that's super, super important. So giving examples of new vocabulary and then having students use those examples when they're writing and speaking so that you can ensure that they're using the correct comprehension. Next, if you don't know a word, use a dictionary. Right? You can use your phone. I mean, there's a lot of different apps. Dictionarycom, this is one I highly recommend. Maybe even right now, if take a look at it. It's a website and there's an app that you can use. But if you see a word, for example, multiple times and you don't know the meaning, or maybe you're confused about something, a single word, you can use that dictionary to help. It's going to give you the definition. It'll give you the part of speech. And hopefully, depending what you use, they'll give you some examples. Dictionary.com is an excellent way of being able to improve that. And they do give you sound. There's audio as well. So if you click on a word, like the word dictionary, you click on it and they will say dictionary. So you can also improve your listening and your speaking and your accent as well. I do recommend an English-only dictionary because that's the best way to practice to improve your reading skills in English. If you're reading for fun and you just want to know the definition quickly, using a translator would be fine as well. By the way, this second example, thesaurus.com, I'm going to explain that in just a couple minutes, but this is another very good resource for looking at similar words and improving your vocabulary that way. Okay. Next, what I highly recommend, and this is kind of more directed for students, but certainly instructors as well. Create your own personal dictionary. This example that you see right here, this is something I created. I'm more than happy. Feel free to email me. I can send you this template, this dictionary. Something simple that you have the word, you have the part of speech, you have the definition or synonym. Synonym means similar word, and then you have an example sentence. So look at what we have right here. The word that we have is plausible. Plausible. This is an adjective. And by the way, that BLE ending right here, the I or IBLE, this often means that is an adjective. So it's describing a thing. Okay. Now the definition, the meaning, plausible means possible or able to happen. So as an example, you can say it's plausible that we will be able to travel around the world by the end of the year. Okay, so it is possible that we can travel by the end of the year. Okay, so again, I strongly recommend using this personal dictionary example. You hear new words or phrases, write them down, write what they mean, include a sample sentence. And also, if you want to write the translation in your first language, do that too. You can add another column and put what the translation is in your first language. So that way you can practice it and you can learn it even faster. Okay, next I want to talk a little bit about grammar. So grammar, it's not everyone's favorite topic. I'll be honest, I mean, I taught grammar for many years. A lot of people think it's kind of boring, but it is extremely, extremely important, okay? It's so important that I want to talk about it when we're talking about listening and speaking. And the reason being is because when you're thinking about how do I improve my grammar? How do I choose the right words in the right order? How do I know I'm doing it correctly? Grammar is extremely important. So one way that you can do this is by listening to people that are speaking correct grammar. That example I gave you about texting back and forth, that is terrible grammar. Okay, it's helpful for vocabulary, for slang words, but not for correct grammar. So things like, you know, listening to, and I'll give some examples, but some like YouTube videos, or if you listen to the news, or if you read the news, they're going to be speaking with correct grammar. And so I do encourage you to listen to the way that they're forming their sentences. Where are they putting the words? What do they start with? What do they end with? All of that is going to be helpful for your grammar skills. Reading. Reading is an excellent way and a very quick way to improve your grammar. Okay. Now, again, I know I'm talking a lot about sort of reading and writing, but it's because it's connected. It's connected directly with listening and speaking. If you're by yourself, like I said, if you don't have a lot of opportunity to speak, what you can do is you can read. And so the more that you read, you improve your grammar skills so that when you speak, you will speak more fluently and more correctly, which is the goal of what you want to do. You can practice new grammar by speaking with others so that you feel comfortable. So like I said, you learn the new grammar and then you practice speaking it with others. I would strongly, strongly encourage you to write down any questions you have about grammar, either grammar that you read or certain grammar points that you hear, and ask your instructors, your teachers, maybe even a friend or a family member, someone who knows English very well, ask them. So for example, if you say like, I had not planned to go to work, but they asked me to. I had not planned to go to work, but they asked me to. You might be thinking, well, had not. That's something new. I haven't really heard that before. That's kind of an advanced grammar point, and I think I know what that means, but I'm not 100% sure. Excellent. Write that down. If you can remember the example, write that down and ask somebody. or ask me. My email is, I'm going to give you my email. We are more than happy to explain that to you so that you can improve your grammar and then your speaking skills. Teachers, instructors, professors, some tips for you. One thing that you can do to correct errors is by repeating the information, but in a correct way. So for example, if a student says to you, "They was gone yesterday," what you can say is, okay, they were gone yesterday. And so the mistake, the error is that they're saying was. The correct form is they were gone, okay? But instead of directly pointing that out, what you do is you repeat it, you rephrase it using the correct way. So again, you would just say, okay, they were gone yesterday. And what that does, it lowers that effective filter. If students, if they make mistakes and we continuously point them out and correct them, it starts to increase that effective filter, right? So we want to try to make it low. And so they're hearing the correct way of saying it by you saying it correctly. And as a result, they will know the correct way of saying it for the future. Now, sometimes it is important for you to explain errors and how they can be corrected, especially if a student asks you directly. I heard I had not planned. Can you explain what that means? Where is that past tense? Is that future? What does that mean exactly? Then yes, then you would explain it to them in more details and correct that. But I always think that giving examples and having students give their own examples is going to be extremely helpful to verify that comprehension, making sure that they truly do know how to use those grammar points. Okay, pronunciation. I know this is something that's very important, improving pronunciation and speaking with a more clear pronunciation. Now, as you see here, I have, under accents, I have American, British, Indian, Ameri-Britian. That's not a real word. I'm just trying to kind of make a joke. But my purpose of saying this is that there are so many different accents. There are so many different accents. Every single person has a different accent, slightly. And so my question is, what kind of accent are you trying to get? Is it American? Is it British? Is it Irish? Is it Australian? Is it just sort of general English? What I have here is I have an example of Great Britain. And you can see, I mean, Great Britain, it's a small area. Ireland, Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, Wales. These countries are very, very small, but you can see that every single color is a different region. And within each region, so for example, like the North here, all of these colors, these signify a different kind of accent. And that's all within one region of one country. Now, let's take India. India is a huge country, right? There's a lot of different states. There's a lot of different accents. And so again, it's okay that people have different accents, that they have different ways of pronouncing things. The thing that's important is if that pronunciation leads to miscommunication. If someone is not able to understand what you're saying, for example, like a specific word, then that's where you need to work on hearing it and then practicing that so you can say it in a way that other people understand. So let me give some examples. Okay, for pronunciation, the V sound and the TH sound. So let's take a look first of all at the V sound. Okay, when you make that sound V, your teeth touch your lip. V, like that. So it's similar to F. Like if you say something like friend, it's the same thing. You put your teeth to your lip. Okay. It's something we call voiced, which means that you have air coming out, V, like that. And let's take a look at some examples. Using V at the beginning of a word. Very, voice, vital, or my last name, Volkert. Using V in the middle of a word. Silver, review, develop. And then using it at the end of a word. Alive, believe, forgive. And then putting those all into a sentence. I believe it is very important to develop friendships and live happily. So my recommendation for you, if this is something, if it's V or another sound, write down those examples, use V at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of the word, and then put them into a sentence and practice that over and over and over again until you feel really confident using that when you're speaking with somebody. Okay, let's take a look at the TH. TH sound, the th. Your tongue is between your teeth, kind of like you're sticking your tongue out, th, like that. Next, there's voiced and voiceless. Okay, so you don't have to do this right now, but if you want, you can, just as an activity. So voiced, if you put your hand to your throat like this, and think of the word the, just the. When you say that, the, you can feel your throat vibrate a little bit. You can feel it moving. The, there, though. Okay, and that's what we call voiced. On the other hand, the word think, when you do that, think, the TH, your voice, your throat does not move. That's why we call it voiceless. There's no air going through. Think, like that. Okay, so some examples: think, thought, through. Okay, so there's two different ways of pronouncing the TH sound in English. Some examples: father, method, worthy, faith, Beth, moth. Okay, so again, I encourage you to have examples using that at the beginning of the word, in the middle, and then at the end again. So here's a good example for you. That's a thoughtful thing you've done. Therefore, I'm thinking about buying 3 gifts for you. Okay, so again, you're using as many examples as you can to put into one sentence so that you can practice that. Okay, one final thing I'll say about pronunciation before we move on is when you're practicing by yourself, so like say for example that you're saying this, that's the thoughtful thing you've done. That's the thoughtful thing you've done. That's excellent. If you can say that, perfect, okay? What becomes a little more difficult is when you're speaking with someone, because sometimes what happens is you go back to maybe like a D sound, like father, like a D instead of a TH. And that's where practice helps. The more that you practice it in before you speak, the more likely you will be able to speak that correctly when you're speaking with someone else. Okay, I also definitely recommend you record yourself and listen to yourself talking. Maybe you've done this before. I can tell you, I feel like I sound weird when I listen to myself speaking on a recording, but this is a perfect way for you to improve your pronunciation. So I recommend recording yourself and listening to it, and then you'll see your progress over time. Okay, so maybe at the beginning you have some difficulty, but if you do this over and over again, you will improve, and you'll hear yourself improving with those specific pronunciation about those words that you're using. Okay, like I said, practice as much as you can, even if it's just 15 minutes a day. Every time you practice, you're improving vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, fluency, and your listening skills. I do have some more teaching tips. Some of you might be familiar with the TOEFL or the IELTS exam. This is a professional exam, especially for international students who want to study in the United States or in England, for example. So I do encourage you to take a look here. They have a lot of excellent free materials. They have examples of speaking tests, and they give you some examples and some tips for how to improve your speaking. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at that as well. So again, TOEFL and IELTS. Also, and I know that the presenter, Amita, yesterday, she talked a little bit about this for the reading and writing. And so what this is what we call the Common European Framework of Reference. And so essentially what it does, it kind of places your level of speaking and listening in a rubric or on a scale. Okay, so for example, A is a beginner, and then C is the advanced user. B is in the middle. Okay, so just taking a look at this, like for example, a basic user being able to speak, I can interact in a simple way. If the other person repeats things slowly, I can ask and answer simple questions that I know about, okay? C2, all the way to the end, the most advanced. It's saying I can take part effortlessly in any conversation. Basically, you feel comfortable talking about anything to anyone, okay? So that's that sort of range. You can look this up. I found this from, it's called rcampus.com. If you're curious about sort of assessing yourself and seeing where you are, you can go there and you can kind of self-assess and then work towards your final goal. Okay, some more teaching tips. Have students teach a lesson about something. Have them be the experts on the topic. They can teach it to the class. They should incorporate things like vocabulary and grammar that are discussed in class and then demonstrate their understanding of those concepts. They can also engage classmates in activities. So kind of like teacher for the day. It might be a fun activity. It might be a way for them to be able to improve their speaking, their vocabulary, and their grammar. Okay, so in summary, use a dictionary to write down new words and practice them in conversation. Record yourself speaking and listening to improve. Practice as much as possible. And then again, try different techniques to practice that speaking. Okay, so next we have listening. So I'm going to go back to the chat. So how often do you hear a new word in English? Maybe every day, once a week, once a month. How often do you hear a new word in English? Okay, every day. Once 2 weeks, every week, every second, okay. Lots of everydays, that's good. When I read news stories, okay. Excellent. Okay, so it looks like a lot of you are saying pretty much every day I learn a new word in English or a new phrase. Okay. What do you do when you learn those new words? Do you write them down? Sometimes what I'll do, like for example, in Spanish, if I hear a new phrase, I'll put it in my phone. I don't want to forget, so I'll take my phone out, I'll put that in there, and I'll look it up later, and then I'll practice it later. So I think that's something you might suggest, or I would suggest doing as well, to remember those new words, to look them up, and then put them in that personal dictionary, like I mentioned before. Have your own dictionary, and then you're going to improve your vocabulary that way. Okay, so again, we just took a look at the speaking CEFR, and so this is the listening version. So someone who's basic, like a beginner, they can say, I can recognize familiar words, very basic phrases, all the way up to advanced. I have no difficulty understanding any kind of spoken language. It doesn't mean that you understand, that you know every single word, but it means that you know enough words that you can feel very comfortable repeating and explaining if you're hearing something like, for example, on TV or from a native speaker. Again, rcampus.com, this is where I got the rubric from. Okay, I mentioned it before, dictionary.com. If you do hear a word maybe multiple times and you don't understand the meaning, or maybe you're confused about something, use that dictionary to help. So I mentioned before that you can click on the word for dictionary.com and it'll tell you, it'll say the word out loud for you. So here, this is an example. I took a screenshot of the word ability. So what you would do is you would just click on the sound icon and they'll say the word for you, okay? It also has here, this is what we call the phonetic pronunciation, and that just kind of breaks it down. So ability, ability. The one that's kind of bolded, that's where the stress is, that is where the emphasis is. Ability. And then it also has the part of speech, which is a noun. it gives the plural version, and then you see here we have 3 different examples. So I personally, I'm a big fan of Dictionary.com. I think it's very helpful. I think it's a great way for you to improve. They also have something called Word of the Day, which I think is pretty cool. And just when you go to the website, it'll say Word of the Day. In this case, it's the word ductile. And you can click on it and it will give you some examples of that. Okay, so if you want to learn new words, more new words every day, I recommend Dictionary.com. Okay, I mentioned thesaurus.com before. And these thesaurus, this shows synonyms. And so like I said before, synonyms are similar words. So think of S, synonym, similar. Like the word studious. If you go to thesaurus.com and type in the word studious, you can hear the word and you can see synonyms. So for example, diligent, thoughtful, academic, reflective. These are other words you can use instead of just saying studious over and over and over again. Opposite words are called antonyms. So if you want to hear the opposite of studious, ignorant, lazy, negligent, these are good examples of how to learn the opposite of the word as well. And again, it's double. You're learning twice the amount of vocabulary. Okay, some other ways to improve your listening skills. Some of you might be familiar with TED Talks. I don't know if, you know, some people love them, some people don't watch them at all, but I definitely encourage you because TED Talks, one, there's a variety of presentations that you can listen to. A lot of them are very academic and they're professional. So that academic language I mentioned before at the beginning, you can definitely improve your vocabulary by listening to these TED Talks. And they're very interesting too. You can hear correct grammar. You can improve your grammar by listening to them speaking correctly. And then finally, you can enable subtitles or captions so that you can read as you're listening to them. So you're improving your listening skills, you're improving your reading, and you're improving your writing because you learn how to spell correctly. And then you, in turn, you'll be able to improve your speaking by hearing other people say it correctly. I also encourage you to, like I said, things like even YouTube or Netflix. You can watch TV shows using subtitles. You can watch the news, you can watch your favorite TV show, use subtitles. I think that will help you. Even if it's slang vocabulary, even if it's not super formal or academic, it's okay. It's all good experience for you and it's good vocabulary. Listen to the radio, music. When I was learning Spanish, I listened to a ton of music in Spanish and I looked up the lyrics. I looked up the words to try to connect what I was hearing to what they were saying. The news as well, podcasts. Some of you might like podcasts. Those are excellent ways to increase your listening skills. Okay, and then finally, I have video games. I know it sounds a little bit weird, but a lot of people like to play video games. And nowadays, you can connect with people from around the world. The reason I'm saying this is because I had a student from the Middle East, and his English was amazing. His accent, he almost sounded like a native speaker, and his vocabulary was unbelievable. And I just asked him, I said, kind of like, why are you here? Why are you learning English? Your English is so good. And he said, I played a lot of video games with Americans, and I heard them speaking to each other, and I practiced. He had a low effective filter because he was playing video games, and his vocabulary just increased a lot. So you don't have to play video games to improve your vocabulary, but if you play video games already, then that might be something that can help you as well. Okay, some more teaching tips. I would recommend giving a short comprehension assessment after a listening activity. So you can have them, maybe you could have your students listen to a TED Talk and then present them with a list of questions to see their comprehension about that. You can focus on areas in need of improvement. So maybe it's vocabulary, maybe it's overall comprehension, but that way you can focus on where the students need extra help. Students and instructors, self-reflections are extremely important. So you need to constantly think, where do I need to improve? Or where do my students need to improve? This is something you can do. You can go to TED Talks or Google TED Talks and just choose one and listen to it. Practice. How much of it do you know? Do you understand a lot of it? Or is a lot of it very, very confusing and you just don't quite understand what they're talking about? That would just be a good assessment for you to figure out kind of where your level is and where you want to improve for that, especially for academic vocabulary. Okay, I encourage you to listen to different accents. Hearing a variety of English speakers will help you improve your own listening comprehension and then your pronunciation as well. These are just a handful of countries where English is the primary language. You know, again, every single country, every region within a country is going to have different accents. Ireland, it is a tiny country. I visited there. I took a bus. You can get across the whole country in about 3 hours. It's very small. Even within that tiny country, they have very different accents and they can understand. They say, oh, you're from Southwest Ireland or you're from the North. So every accent is slightly different. So I encourage you to listen to different accents to improve your overall listening comprehension. Finally, I encourage you to listen and repeat. Listen to words being spoken, repeat them. Once or twice might not be enough. You might have to do it over and over and over again. If you can practice every day, that will help you improve the quickest. You hear someone saying a word and then you say it after them, or you say it together at the same time. That's going to help you. And it's okay. If you have to do it 20 times in a row, that is okay. Everyone is different. You might have to say it over and over again until you get it to the degree, to the way that you feel comfortable using it with others. So in summary, to increase your vocabulary, you can improve listening comprehension, Dictionarycom, thesource.com. You can watch the TED Talks or YouTube, listen to music, listen to the news, and then listen and repeat. Okay, so this brings us to our last section, which is goal setting. And then again, I will have time to answer questions in just a few minutes. Okay, so my final question for you all. What are your goals for improving your English? Why do you want to improve your English? Okay, so better communication, effective communication, to be more fluent, professional success. Okay, definitely very important nowadays, for sure. Okay, interesting, to work in the UK, so to work in an English-speaking country like the UK. Okay, global communication, better prospects. Okay, so a few of you are saying for work or professional careers. Excellent. Okay, technical words, better future. A lot of you are saying about global language, the fact that it is something that connects us all around the world. Exactly. Okay, fluency. Professional. Excellent. All right, so thank you for sharing your goals with me. Okay, make sure that you continue to focus on those goals. Have a plan for those goals. Whether it's writing down an activity maybe every single day, like today I'm going to work on listening, tomorrow I'm going to work on speaking, on Sunday I'm going to write something down and I'm going to do some reading. So kind of make a list of activities for you so that you can see your progress as you work towards achieving your goals. Another important thing to consider is, what is success? At what point do you achieve those goals? And the reason I'm asking this is because everyone has different goals, right? But it's important for you to put what we call benchmarks. And so, for example, you say, I want to be able to have a conversation for 30 minutes with a native English speaker. Awesome, great. That's a very that's a solid goal. That's something that you can achieve. Once you do that, you cross it off, you say, I achieved my goal. What is my next goal? Okay. And I think this is extremely important, because if you say, well, I want to improve my English. Yes, but what does that mean exactly? Do you mean that you want to improve your writing skills or your reading? Does it mean you want to be able to be more fluent when speaking with others? I think it's extremely important for you to sort of narrow down what your goals are and think about, when do I achieve them? When do I know that I've been successful in my goals? Okay, that's going to be extremely, extremely helpful for you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's another important thing. Professors, family, friends who speak English, it is okay for you to say, I need help with this. That is the only way for you to learn. Okay, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Teachers, my final tips for you: do things like write objectives on the board. Explain them to students every class. Today, we are going to be talking about this, this, and this. It's something I started during my, well, several years ago when I was teaching, and I found that very, very helpful, because students know what to expect for that class, and they know what their goals are, and they'll know once they've achieved them. You can also have students write their own personal English goals down. And then again, like I'm doing right now, remind them to check in on their progress and see if they've actually been working towards achieving those goals. And if they have actually achieved them, then they can write new ones. You can constantly improve and write new goals for yourself. This is a form, I call it the teacher reflection form. This is mostly for instructors, but and it's something I'm happy to share with you, but it's something I created a few years ago as sort of a way for you to reflect on your teaching abilities, not necessarily abilities, but specific classes. So for example, timing of the lesson. How was your timing? E is engagement. Were students engaged? Did they understand? Activities. What kind of activities did you use? Challenges. Was there anything that happened that was difficult, or maybe students were confused by something that you can improve on that for the next time? H, highlight. What was the best thing about that lesson or that class? E, extra notes. Is there anything you want to write down so that you don't forget it for next time? And then finally, recommendations. What recommendations or suggestions do you have to yourself for the next class so that you can constantly improve your own teaching skills as well? Okay, the last few things I want to talk about, I just want to mention whether, you know, if it's a family member, perhaps someone who's listening today, disabilities is something that it's not often talked about, especially when learning another language. But if you or someone you know has a certain disability, just understand that there are a variety of ways to learn English. It's not just speaking and listening, right? It's writing, it's reading, it's vocabulary, it's grammar. I think the more that you practice, the better that will be. It might also require individual tutoring or additional English courses for someone with a disability. Maybe they have a difficult time reading. Okay, well, that might mean that they need to spend a little bit more time doing that, specifically with a tutor or a teacher. And then technology. There's a lot of amazing things that you can find online for technology. And so I would encourage you, if you know someone that has a certain disability, to encourage them to look online to find additional materials. Finally, one thing I offer for my business, Learn Now, Learn Well, I call it the phrases of the week. So it's 2 free emails that you would get each week. It has phrases in English and Spanish. Maybe you can learn a 3rd or 4th language. But it's something that will help you improve your vocabulary. So for example, like the phrase call off, some of you might know this, some of you might not, but call off means to cancel. So if you say like, I had to call off the meeting, that means I had to cancel the meeting. Okay, so again, if you're interested, let me know. I can sign you up so you can get some additional vocabulary. Again, the website's Dictionarycom, thesaurus.com. And then there's something called the Purdue Online Writing Lab, or OWL for short. This is a free resource from the University of Purdue in the United States. They have a lot of very good information, especially for academic and professional reading and writing. So if you just Google that, Purdue Online Writing Lab, it'll come up right away. I strongly encourage you, especially if you want to improve your academic skills, namely with reading and writing, definitely take a look at that. And again, it's free, so you'll be able to get that access right away. Finally, I offer some online courses as well. That's my website. I offer a business English course for those of you interested in improving your academic and professional English. And then I do offer something called phrasal verbs in English. So like call off is an example of a phrasal verb. There's a whole class that you can take to help you improve your vocabulary for sort of that slang, basic English vocabulary. Also, if you want to follow us on social media, we do have a YouTube channel as well with additional English vocabulary words and phrases. Okay, again, I want to say thank you all for the opportunity. Here's my contact information. You have my email, you have my website. And so right now, Ms. Bhavani, I'm going to turn it over to you for the question and answers. So if you'd like to choose some questions, I think we have, what, maybe about 15 minutes or so. So I'm more than happy to answer some questions right now.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Joel. So my colleague, the Garatnam, is there. She is ready to pay you thanks. Please wait, Joel. Durgaratnam, please join.
Yes, thank you, madam. Shall we continue with the gratitude message, or shall we wait for the questions?
We will raise the questions, and after that we'll have the question and answer session.
Okay, so.
Okay. Any questions from the participants? Any questions from the participants? Joel, you see in the chat box? Joel?
Yep. Okay. So the first question, yeah, so everyone feel free, if you have any questions right now, feel free to put them in the chat. And I'll try to, answer as many as I can. Okay, so the first question, what is proficiency and how to measure it? I think that's an excellent question. Proficiency, as I mentioned sort of earlier in the presentation, it kind of depends on what you're talking about. Is it academic proficiency? Is it your sort of informal conversations that you're having with others? And what I would recommend is setting those goals for yourself. So proficiency, can you have a 30-minute conversation with somebody, and can you understand everything that they're saying for that 30 minutes? Can you speak for 30 minutes? If you have to give a presentation for class, can you give a 20-minute presentation effectively so that others understand? So the other thing I would recommend is that the CEFR that I mentioned, rcampus.com, that breaks it down a little more specifically in terms of where your level is, if you're more of a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And I think if you look at the listening and the speaking sections, that's going to help you with your sort of figuring out where you are with that level of proficiency. Good question.
Hello, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so my name is Nasreen, I'm from Syria. I wanted to know, like, some of our students sometimes have an accent. So first of all, my first question is, do you think having an accent would interfere with communication and with delivering the message, I mean? And if yes, how can we as teachers help our students to overcome such a challenge in our classrooms?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Nazreen, for the question. So first of all, like I mentioned before, I think that it depends. The accent, everyone has an accent, right? I think if it interferes or if it becomes difficult for others to understand, then I think that's where, as instructors, you need to do things sort of like that. So we call it call and response. And so what that is you have students listen to a word and you have them repeat it. So you listen to, for example, like a native speaker, and you have the students repeat it together. And you do repetition. You do that over and over and over again. That's good for an entire class. I'm not sure what your situation exactly, I don't know how many students you have in class, but if it's something that maybe you have a smaller class, if you can meet with students individually, and if you can talk with them and figure out what it is that they need help with, then you can do individualized pronunciation practice. Another thing I would recommend is if you can have students talk with a native English speaker, that would be a good way to sort of, and sort of going back to that proficiency question too, does the native speaker understand the student? If they're constantly asking, I'm sorry, or can you repeat that? I don't understand. Then that is that sort of difficult area where maybe they do need some more help with their accents, a little bit more with the pronunciation side of things. But like I said, I think what's very important is to get a good idea of each individual student, what their level is, what their accent is, and does it interfere with their ability to communicate. So I know that's kind of a general answer, and like I said, I'm more than happy to answer any additional questions. You have my email there as well, so I can definitely answer that in more detail. But yeah, like I said, that listening, repetition, the more you listen, the more you repeat, the better you will improve your accents.
Well, if we're talking about repetition, would that be appropriate for adult learners also?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
What's
Most
the
of my
what is the right method?
Yeah, so most of my students are adults, and you know, whether they're 20 years old or 60 years old, everyone finds that extremely helpful by being able to repeat that together. If they don't feel comfortable necessarily, that's where I would recommend having them do it on their own, maybe like at home or something like that. Some people don't feel comfortable doing it in class. That's okay, but absolutely for adults, that is absolutely something I do with them.
For speaking skills, like can we force the students to talk at first, or we should like make some icebreakers, games and things like that, and let the students speak at their own pace?
Yeah, so if you're talking about like very, very low level, it's okay for them to just listen. And that's a good question. That a lot of times when people are just learning English, it's okay for them to just listen and not speak. It doesn't mean that they're not listening. It means that they don't know what to say yet. So I think that doing that, having an icebreaker, having a game, and I mentioned that earlier in the presentation, starting a class like 5 minutes by doing some sort of low effective filter activity, that's a great way for them to feel relaxed. They feel more comfortable. Hopefully it's enjoyable, and then you can introduce some new vocabulary that way as well.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to take, and again, I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions. I'm going to do my best, though, to answer as many as possible. Okay, so the question here is, how can you improve speed and accuracy in speaking English? Excellent question. You probably know what I'm going to say by this point, because I've said it so many times. Practice. The more that you practice, the faster you will improve. Think about, like, for example, if I started teaching you Spanish right now, I can teach you a few phrases, but you're going to say it slowly because it's the first time you're hearing it. But as you hear it more and more and more, you're going to be able to speak faster. I always tell my students, it's not a race. When you're learning English, you don't get more points for speaking faster, right? You get points for speaking correctly. So what you do, it's a slow process. You learn it, you speak it, you practice it, and the more that you do that, you will get to that point where you can speak faster. So I definitely encourage you that if that's something that you're interested in, if you can practice with others, I'll be honest, I practice in Spanish to myself sometimes. If I don't have anyone to talk to, I'll talk to myself in Spanish, right? Just because it's a way for me to practice and for me to improve. So patience, and you'll definitely get there for sure. All right, let's see, another question. Okay, so how can I improve communication skills as a beginner? So I would say that several of the things that I mentioned today, like for example, reading and writing, that is a very low effective filter way of you to improve your English vocabulary and grammar, spelling, all of those things. especially if you are a beginner, I encourage you to read simple, sort of easier texts, and you can do a Google search. There's a lot of information online. If you just do, you know, like easy English reading, you'll find a lot of materials that you can read, and for writing practice as well. For speaking, like I just mentioned a second ago, you can start slow. Just have basic conversations with your friends. Even something simple like just 5 minutes, tell me what you did today. That's it, just something very simple. The more that you do that, you will build, and then you will increase your vocabulary, and you will improve your listening, your speaking, your reading, and your writing skills. Okay, another question is, is it correct, or is it right to correct grammar of the student in the middle of his speech? It depends on the situation, but I would say probably not, because you don't, well, one, you don't want to interrupt them. Two, that effective filter, right? If you keep correcting their errors while they're speaking, their effective filter is going to go up very quickly. And we don't want that. We want to keep that kind of lower. So what I would suggest, if a student is making a mistake, let them finish talking, and then you can address that afterwards, okay? If they make the same mistake 4 times in the same sentence, then yeah, it's okay for you to correct it right there and then. But I would say, you know, just be mindful of that. Make sure you do give them the correct way of saying it, but try to not interrupt them too much, because we want to make them feel successful. We want to make them feel comfortable. And I would also say, I would encourage them to write it down. If it's something they make a mistake on over and over again, tell them just write it in your phone, write it down, and then practice that so that you can, so that you know the correct way of saying it, and then you can improve it for the future as well. Okay, so I think we have time for a few more. Let's see.
Any questions?
Okay, so there's a question about accuracy and comprehensibility with pronunciation. How to balance both of these in a class where the listener is not able to follow what is accurate. We know something is correct, but it does not work in the context. Okay. So if I understand the question correctly, I think it's asking about if a student is not able to understand the correct way, for example, of pronunciation, of giving pronunciation or understanding something, I would strongly say use a variety of activities. If you do the same thing every day in class, it can be helpful, but not everyone learns the same way, right? Like you might have one student who listens to a TED Talk and they understand everything and they love it. But you might have other students who say, I don't really like that very much. Okay, then you can listen to the news, or you can listen to a podcast. You can listen to a song, right? So have a variety of activities that they're listening to correct grammar, to correct vocabulary, and that way students will have more of an opportunity to learn and to listen and improve their pronunciation instead of just one way over and over and over again. And so like those teaching tips that I kind of provided, I would encourage you to do some of those and try it out. I mean, for all of you instructors, I'm sure many of you have been teaching for years and you know this, but you don't always know right away if something's going to work. So you try it and you use that teacher reflection form. If it was excellent, perfect. Do it again, right? Students enjoyed it, they learned, do it again. If you do an activity and students were confused or they don't quite understand it, maybe don't do that activity again. Maybe change it so that students will be able to understand it for the future. Okay, so I would say using a variety of activities is going to be important for something like that. Okay, how to improve tense, and I think I'll take one more question after this. But how to improve your tense while speaking? Excellent question. What I always encourage is, well, you asked about speaking. I would say same thing for writing too. But what I encourage everyone every single day, I encourage all of my students to write at least one paragraph using 3 tenses. What did you do that day? What are you doing like that night? And what will you do the next day? And so that way you practice all 3 tenses. Now, when it comes to speaking, it depends on the context. But what I would say is I would recommend choosing a topic. So say, for example, you want to talk with your friends and you want to say, let's talk about, you know, like I know cricket obviously is a very popular sport in India. So maybe you could, I know it's different right now, but normally you could say like, let's talk about, you know, the last few cricket matches, or how is my team doing this season? You can choose a topic and you can talk about that. And so you can say, you know, last year the team was, you know, blah, blah, blah. This year the team is doing well, give some examples. And then I think for next year, I think we're going to see some new players, etc. Okay, so to practice those different tenses, choose different topics. If you're still learning the different grammar, definitely look at the grammar first, learn those tenses first, and then practice them when you're speaking. If you're not sure, like I mentioned before in the presentation, ask somebody, ask your instructor, what does had mean? By the way, had, like had not planned, that is the past perfect. So it's used when you're describing 2 situations in the past, and then you're talking about that first one that happened. Okay, so something like that, where you learn it first, and then you practice it with other friends, or colleagues, or coworkers, or students, you know, classmates. Okay, so I think we have time for one final question. Okay, so this is going to be the final question, and then, like I said, you have my email. Any questions I did not answer, please feel free to send me an email, and I can respond to you directly.
Easy methods for good developing acceleration, speaking, and listening, sir. Hello, sir.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that, please?
Sir. Namaste, sir. Sir, good evening, sir.
Yeah. Hi. What is your question?
Sir, now, sir, your delivery lesson is superb, sir. I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
What are easy methods for good developing acceleration?
Sorry, I think I'm having some audio issues. Could you type it in the chat, please?
Hello, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. I think I was having some audio issues there.
Sir, good develop.
Hello.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to understand. I had some audio issues. So just the last question that I'm going to address, a student was asking about slang vocabulary, saying, is it okay to use slang vocabulary when speaking with others? Is it advisable to use slang words to make our speech look more native-like? That's a very good question. And I would say it really depends on who you're talking to, okay? If you're speaking with your friends and you want to use slang words, excellent, great, that's perfect, right? It will help, I think, I mean, depending on what the words are, of course, but I think when you're watching movies or TV shows, especially if it's like an American or British TV show or movie, the more slang that you can learn, the easier it will be for you to understand those movies and TV shows, and songs especially. People use a lot of slang words in songs, and so I think if you can practice that with others, it will help you understand that for those specific reasons and those areas. If you're speaking to your professor, I think you probably know this, but you probably don't want to use a lot of slang words with them, just because that's more of an academic professional setting. But I definitely do encourage you. I will say the final thing I'll say about that is it's okay if you don't know a lot of slang words, okay? I've taught students from all over the world. And I know a lot of students, they want to learn slang words right away so that they can understand different people from around the world. And I say that's great. Definitely do that. But don't feel bad if you don't know a lot of slang words. If your English is very sort of academic, or if you know like general words, that's okay. You can always improve your slang words. And if you want to do that, like I said, watching movies with subtitles or TV shows, that is an excellent way for you to learn that new slang, those new vocabulary words. And then you can practice those with your friends, and then you can improve that way. So, okay. I think that is all the time that we have for questions. So again, Ms. Bhavani, I'll turn it back over to you, but thank you all so much. I really appreciate you all being here for this webinar. If you do have any questions, again, you have my email address, you have my website. Feel free to reach out to me. If you're interested in tutoring or classes or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would love to hear from you.
Joel. Hello, Joel.
Yes.
It's our thing to say thank you, but you have put a thank on your screen. That's very nice. We have to pay the thanks. So please wait. We are going to pay you a gratitude, please. You hear us few words. Durgaratnam, please carry on.
Thank you so much, Bhavani Madam. And I'm extremely glad to express gratitude to Mr. Joel Volkert, sir, for explaining about the basic principles for developing listening and speaking skills through his presentation. It's been very informative related to factors affecting the language and ways to improve it, especially sharing teaching tips which will make the classroom interesting, sharing your own experience to let us know the importance of practice, and suggesting few websites and strategies which will help us in improving the language and also the teaching experience. Once again, on behalf of VSM College, I thank Mr. Joel Volkert, sir, for sparing his precious time for being here with us and sharing his knowledge. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great day and a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great day, Joel. Thank you very much. Please be with us. Please be with us for the next session also, if possible for you. Please be with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. So now we got another important resource person. Dr. Meenakshi Barad. Dr. Meenakshi Barad. She is an assistant professor in English, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. We are going to invite her. Hello, Meenakshi.
Yeah, good evening, Bhavani.
Please wait, I'll just introduce you.
Please.
Dr. Meenakshi Barad is an assistant professor of English in Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. She has an MPhil and PhD in English language education from IFLU, the prestigious university, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. She has an MPhil and PhD in English language education from IFLU, and she has undergone management capacity enhancement training, IIMB, and is an ETS certified writer in addition to examining for standardized language tests. She has more than 25 years of experience, which includes teaching in UG and PG levels. Teacher training and training administrative at central government offices. She believes the learning environment should be one where attendees can make mistakes and learn without fear. It's a nice thing. She believes the learning environment should be one where attendees can make mistakes and learn without fear. This is the source of learning in a relaxed atmosphere. She favors a participative and consultative training style, which will give the participants the opportunity to experiment through exercises, discussions, and group activities. Her areas of specialization include feedback on speaking and writing, language testing, language endangerment, and revitalization. So we should all get revitalized. Sociology of Education and Communication Skills. Now we are going to revitalize from her precious pearl-like words. We heartily welcome Ms. Meenakshi to deliver her valuable speech.
Thank you very much, Bhavani. Thank you very much for that warm introduction. And thanks also to the management, the principal, and the organizing committee of this e-conference for having me here. I'd like to plunge right into my presentation. In this presentation, I will describe feedback, an area of teacher development research that is central in understanding and strengthening effective teaching and learning of a second language, a fertile area of research. I will present my practice and feedback first on writing and then on speaking, and suggest possibilities for improving the teaching learning process with examples drawn from my own practice as a teacher, both online and offline. I try to identify the patterns in students' responses to these questions. Okay. So I'd like to share my screen. Yeah. Yeah. Is that visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with talking about learning a second language. Learning a second language is a long and complex undertaking. Your whole person is affected as you struggle to reach beyond the confines of your first language into a new language, a new culture, a new way of thinking, feeling, and acting. Total commitment, total involvement, physical, intellectual, and emotional, are necessary to successfully send and receive messages in a second language. Teaching cannot be defined apart from learning. Teaching is guiding and facilitating learning, enabling the learner to learn, setting conditions for learning. And your understanding of how the learner learns will determine your philosophy of education, your teaching style, your approach, your methods, your classroom techniques. I'd like to get to this. Yeah. And if, like Skinner, you look at learning as a process of operant conditioning through a carefully paced program of reinforcement, then you will teach accordingly. On the other hand, if you view second language learning as a deductive rather than an inductive process, you will probably choose a more cognitive approach. The purpose of everything you do in English class is to help students to develop their writing and speaking skills, regardless whether it is grammar, drama, or standardized tests. So in what ways can a teacher correct students' mistakes without decreasing their confidence? We just heard Joel talk about lowering the affective filter. Okay, so that is a very, very important thing in learning. I would say in the sociology, in the philosophy of education, lowering of the affective filter is given great importance. Yes, Pavan. Oh, it says I'm sharing the screen. Yeah, 1 minute. Okay.
You have to open the PPT, ma'am.
Yeah, I am. Okay. Why am I not able to? Says I am sharing it. Okay, yeah. Is that visible? Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. 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 So, yeah. So in what ways can we do what we are attempting to do? Okay. So in language study, students will not always use correct English. They will make mistakes too when writing or speaking. Yeah. And we can divide mistakes into 3 categories. Let's start with the first category, mistakes. So mistakes are if one says something incorrect and then corrects himself or herself, whether you call that a mistake. Okay. Moving to slips. Slips are mistakes which students can correct themselves once it has been pointed out to them. And then you have the more problematic thing that we encounter as teachers, errors. A systematic deviation made by learners who have not mastered the rules of the language. Because the errors are mistakes caused by the learner not knowing something. For example, a learner might say, I buyed a new book, because he or she might not know that buy has an irregular past tense. Okay, and so they just apply the past tense marker and say, I buyed a new book. Okay, and compare this to slips where they're just accidental or trivial mistakes in speaking, which can be, which are caused by a learner maybe being tired, nervous, excited, or any such temporary factor. So what are the causes of errors? Okay, let's look at the first cause, L1 interference. Perhaps, especially in class, they haven't quite grasped the new information and so continue to make errors. Or perhaps their own language, their own first language gets in the way because of the way English expresses an idea or uses a grammatical construction that is either very different or tantalizingly similar to how this is done in their first language. As a result, they might make a slip. Okay, there might be problems with structure, with the learner's language might have a different L1 sentence structure, or in the way the verb is positioned, or they might have to deal with a different written system. For example, take Arab students, or even students of all the L1s that we have in India, the different L1s. For example, you could take Telugu speakers. In pronunciation, they have a problem with certain sounds because they do not exist in the Telugu language. Like take, for example, the sound a, the sound a, the vowel sound a doesn't exist in the Telugu language. And therefore you have speakers of Telugu who haven't been exposed to any other language, tending to mispronounce it, like instead of apple, they tend to say yapple, or instead of mat, M-A-T, mat, they say myat or byat, and so on. And then there is another sound, or, which isn't there in the Telugu language, and therefore you see I have seen it written on posters instead of orange. It was written orange. Okay. Then there are several sounds like that. The next reason could be false friends. By false friends, we mean words that sound the same but have different meanings. And that can cause trouble, especially for speakers of Romance languages, which share a common heritage with English. For example, take the word libreria, meaning a bookshop in Italian, and it is easy for them to confuse that with library in English, which doesn't mean a bookshop. Next, you have developmental errors, which is another problem category. And they occur naturally as the student's language knowledge develops. And the result is that students apparently make sensible but mistaken assumptions about the way language works. So like, for example, I seed instead of I saw. Again, the past tense marker. And or a student might say like things like might have learned sentences like I have to go, and then say I want to go or I would like to go. And that might lead them to say with perfectly appropriate logic that things like I must to go. Okay, not realizing that to is not permitted with must. Okay, so whatever the reason for the students getting it wrong, it is vital that the teacher realizes that all the students make mistakes as natural part of the process of learning, and these are some of those developmental errors. Then there is overgeneralization, which is, most often used in connection with the language acquisition by children. For example, a young child might say foots instead of feet, overgeneralizing the morphological rule for making plural nouns. Informative assessments providing students with meaningful feedback can greatly enhance their learning and achievement. The downside, of course, is that not all feedback is equally effective, and it can even be counterproductive, especially if it is presented in a solely negative or a corrective way. As John Dewey said more than a century ago, the lived experiences of students are of paramount importance for teachers to understand. How well we do this is reflected in the responses students make to questions related to their favorite topics, their areas of concern, and advice for teachers. Okay, I'd like you all to view a small video in connection with this insensitivity that I was talking about. So you have yeah. Oh. Why doesn't this come on? Can you come here for a minute? This thing video I'm not able to share in this. In ANDHRA, yes, folder. Yeah. Are you all able to view this?
No, ma'am. Video is not playing. You have to click double time. Okay, now it is okay. Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
The video is not audible, ma'am.
Meenakshi madam. Meenakshi madam. The video is not audible. The video is not audible. Meenakshi madam.
Yeah. So we looked at that. Yeah, hello. Okay, okay, it's okay. Yeah, let's move on. Okay, okay, yeah. If there's time, I will repeat it in the end. Okay, so we looked at this and yeah. Informative assessment, yeah, we looked at feedback, okay. Let's look at the writing process. Writing, we have seen now, is a process, okay, but it is both a process and a product. In the process approach to writing, writing instruction includes the entire process of writing, invention, drafting, feedback, and revision. And it's not just the product. It is not just a physical act, but also the mental act of inventing ideas, thinking about how to express them, and organizing them into statements and paragraphs that will be clearer to the reader. So successful writing requires a series of interactive steps involving pre-writing, organizing, drafting, revising, editing, and so on and so forth. So let's look at feedback in general and what it means. It refers to that specific information that teachers provide to their students related to the task of the learning process. And the purpose is to fill the gap between what the student understands at the moment and what is aimed to be finally understood. So behaviorist researchers around the 1950s and 60s focused more on error prevention than error treatment. And they were of the view that error should not be tolerated and at all times be prevented. And they felt that it would interfere with more preferable habits if errors were tolerated. In 1996, Truscott claimed that error correction should at all times be avoided and might even be harmful. However, later work agreed that yes, error correction is necessary. But in this context, the focus is on problem detection and finding a solution to the problem as two essential parts of the problem solving process. Okay, so let's look at problem detection. Detecting a problem depends on picking certain clues suggesting there is a problem. We could ask ourselves about the students' ability to generate and pick up these clues when checking their own or their peers' work for mistakes. And students are only able to detect a problem if they are aware of the corresponding norms themselves. So this basically means that problem detection has to be done by a more capable other, in Vygotsky's words. The teacher may provide help with the detection by either underlining the error, indicating that there is an error, or leaving it to the student to locate the error. The extent to which the student is helped should be determined by the teacher. And when students have more knowledge, less help needs to be provided. Let's move to the problem solving part. After the problem is detected or located, students attempt to resolve it. To do so, they classify the problem and they identify it with others that they have previously encountered and proceed by applying familiar solutions and providing a ready answer, as in the classic form, as I said, the behaviorist form of habit forming. Corrective feedback cannot be considered help in the strict sense of the word, as both stages of the problem-solving process are covered by the teacher, which requires little processing on part of the students. Which brings us now to the types of feedback. Okay. So the different types of feedback we generally use are the direct feedback, indirect feedback, metalinguistic, unfocused, focused, electronic feedback, and reformulation. Let's look at each one now. So direct feedback, where the teacher provides the student with the correct form. Okay. And indirect feedback is where the teacher indicates that an error exists, but does not provide the correction. Okay, in indirect feedback, you can have A, indicating and locating the error, which takes the form of underlining or the use of cursors to show in the student's text. And B, where only indication is done and it takes the form of indication in the margin that an error has taken place in a line of the text. Next, we have metalinguistic corrective feedback, where the teacher provides some form of metalinguistic clue to the error and maybe uses an error code, where the teacher writes the error code in the margin and says, like, for example, WW could be wrong word and so on, which I'll show you all. And or the teacher numbers the errors in the text and then writes brief grammatical descriptions for each numbered error at the bottom of the text. Next, we have unfocused. The focus of the feedback, like I said, it concerns whether the teacher attempts to correct all or most of the students' errors. Okay, or selects just a few types of errors. So this distinction can be applied to each of the above options. I mean, direct or indirect. There is unfocused corrective feedback, which is extensive, or focused corrective feedback, which is intensive. Then we have electronic feedback, where the teacher indicates an error and provides a hyperlink to a file that provides examples of correct usage. And then you could have reformulation, which consists of the teacher rewording the student's text to make the language seem as native-like as possible, while keeping the content of the original intact. Okay. So this is a sample of the metalinguistic error code. So you could say, instead of writing the whole thing, if there is an error in verb tense, you say VT, subject verb, agreements, SV, and word form, WF, wrong word, WW, articles, ART, and so on. let's look at student experiences and preferences for written corrective feedback. Okay, I'd like students to respond and even teachers to imagine what the students' preferences would be to each of these questions in the chat box. So how often have your previous English teachers provided feedback on your compositions or essays? Can I see the chat box? Yeah. To what degree do you want your teacher to provide corrective feedback to your assignments? Okay. I'd like to look at the chat. Okay. Chat, I'm not able to see chat. Please. Yes, I would like to get more feedback from my instructors always, every time. Okay, let's look at this. And yeah. To what degree do you read the written feedback your teacher provides? Can you see the screen now, people? Can you see the screen?
Just PPT only, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yes?
Yes, but PPT.
Pardon?
But PowerPoint presentation only.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Is your teacher's feedback legible? Okay. Yeah.
That's the question in the screen.
Yes.
So you want us to answer?
Yes, yes. And when your teacher provides feedback in English, to what degree do you understand it? I want students to answer. Or teachers, yeah. What you believe your students do. To what degree do you want your teacher to correct every mistake you have made? And to what degree do you prefer feedback in English? Does your teacher's feedback help to improve your writing? Okay. So now let's look at direct or indirect feedback. Indirect feedback, as I said, means that the teacher provides students with some indication that an error exists in their writing. Like, look at this example here. It says, last week I go to the mall, and then there is an indication there that is metalinguistic feedback, which says verb tense, pointing out that there is an error there. So it is direct feedback. So direct feedback is when the teacher crosses out the error and and gives the correct answer. Like, last week, I go to the mall, the error is struck off and went is written there. So how would you like, your teacher to respond to your mistakes? Could you just say yes or no? Would you prefer direct feedback where the mistake is stricken out? And would you like them to correct errors for you? Yeah, like the example given there, he flight to Mumbai. Or indirect feedback where you underline the mistake and correct the mistake where it's clearly underlined, okay, but the correct form is not provided. Or you use the symbol to indicate a mistake in the sentence that you find incorrect. Like he flight to Mumbai, there is a symbol there which says that there is an error. Or there is categorized indirect feedback where the mistake is underlined and a code is used to identify the type of mistake, and then you correct it. Okay. So what expectations do students hold regarding their teacher feedback practices? So when you make a mistake in a written assignment, do you think it is good or bad if the teacher ignores it and doesn't correct it at all? Yeah, I'd like you all to answer that. Yes? Or indicates there is a mistake, underlines it, but doesn't actually tell you what's wrong. So you have to work it out. Or tells you what's wrong, but doesn't actually give you the correct version, and you have to work it out on your own. Or writes in what it ought to be, or corrects in any of the ways above, but doesn't actually give you, doesn't actually make you write out the correct, makes you write out the correct version. Or corrects and makes you write correctly. Often teachers assume that indirect feedback is what should always be used, since it requires students to monitor their own errors and to try and fix the error on their own. Hence, such a strategy promotes learner autonomy. There are indeed many reasons for using indirect feedback on students' essays, but it is important to recognize that there are many reasons why a student makes errors. It could range from carelessness to overgeneralizing. So typically teachers need to suit the feedback to the type of error and the student's level of proficiency and diligence. So let's look at some examples of errors and treatments. Like take if in a grammar class, the teacher has not yet introduced the irregular past tense. And if the student wrote, last week I go to the mall, then it suggests that the student has learned the rule for the regular past tense formation and has applied that rule. So in such an instance, the student doesn't know go is irregular, and so it would be best to provide the student with direct feedback. So you could just strike it off and write, went. Another time when direct feedback might be warranted is when a student writes a sentence using a verb that is not usually used in that particular context. For example, look at this sentence here. Yesterday, bank interest rates expanded by 3%. Okay, and here, asking the student, see, in this case, the student has likely used a dictionary or thesaurus and used a word which is a synonym of increase. So the meaning of expand is similar to increase, but it is typically used with volume or mass. And so asking students to self-correct such a sentence would be very challenging for students if they were not familiar with the difference between increase and expand. In many instances, error correction for word choice, therefore, is best handled through direct correction. So it is also important, again, to recognize that different students may need different kinds of feedback. For a student who is having difficulty acquiring the basic grammatical rules of English, it may be better to let errors like yesterday bank interest rates expanded by 3%. Go uncorrected if the essay has many more basic errors regarding verb tense and subject-verb agreement. On the other hand, suppose students are progressing very nicely in English grammar, then they might want every error indicated and may be able to self-correct the majority of their errors, though perhaps not all word choice errors, as I just pointed out. Okay. So let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of the different feedback types. Direct feedback is too passive and hence ineffective, except in instances that I just showed as examples. And indirect feedback helps learners think more, draws deeper cognitive processing, and it helps learners think a little more and in what the error was the first time they did it. And therefore the learning stuck, and it stuck because it was deeper. Another advantage of indirect feedback that it seems to foment autonomous learning behaviors, which is our ultimate aim. So I'd like to show a couple of examples of this kind of a feedback. Okay. Is this visible? Is this visible?
Just your folder, ma'am. Folder is visible. Document is opening.
Yeah, the document?
Not open.
It's not open. Okay.
Yet to be open.
Okay. Yeah, is that visible?
No.
Yeah, no.
Yes.
No, it is okay.
Okay. So this is one example of, direct feedback. I just wanted you all to look at it, and I'll tell you all what you can do with it later. You can see that most of the errors are, pointed out. And so this is one sample that I wanted you all to look at. We'll go back to it later and go back to our, we are back to the PPT.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. Let's move to focused and unfocused written corrective feedback, which I already talked about. In unfocused corrective feedback or comprehensive written corrective feedback, the teacher notices and provides feedback to all or most of the errors in the learner's written outputs. Okay. And the main point is that different students warrant different correction strategies. But I would like you all to look at another example here. This is, okay. Is this visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Focused and unfocused. Yeah. Yes?
Okay, ma'am.
Is this sample visible? Yeah. So let's look at this. You can see that here you can see some of the errors that are pointed in red, and then there are some others that are pointed in blue. So if the teacher has the choice of, giving unfocused feedback, then it would, I'm sorry, focused feedback, then those are the errors that are corrected in red. And if there is comprehensive correction done, then the errors that are corrected in blue also are included. But imagine what the student's affective filter state would be looking at so many corrections in the text. Okay, so let us go back to this. Yeah. Okay. Now looking at the next kind of feedback. Okay, so the main point is that, as I said, different errors and different students may warrant different correction strategies. While this might involve more reflection on the part of the teacher when correcting students' essays, it is likely to result in more productive error correction in which the feedback suits the circumstances. So in short, every student is unique with special needs, and the more written feedback can be suited to the student and the error, the more likely it will lead to greater writing proficiency for the students. Okay, let's look at one other kind of feedback where you can see individual feedback conferences. Okay, while feedback conferences in writing classes are sometimes viewed as a means for teachers to save time and energy that might be used in marking papers, it can be used in addition to providing written feedback on the students' assignments. Because instead of replacing written feedback, the conferences can be used as a means to interact with the students individually and to help clarify any potential problems they may have had with the indirect feedback that the teacher was providing. And writing feedback conferences can provide immediate clarification of difficult issues. And it is also useful because, learning styles differ, and some students are auditory learners, and these face-to-face conferences more closely match their learning style. So teachers' difficulties in providing feedback. Okay, again, I'd like you all to think of whether it's a yes or no, which I very much doubt that everything will be a yes, because the problems, it takes a lot of time and effort to give comments. Yes. There are too many papers to mark. Yes, in the Indian context. Students make too many mistakes. Yes, most of the time, I'm sure. Students don't read teachers' comments. They only look at the mark given. Yes, because we have not taught them to, look at it, and because we are just starting to teach writing as process. Until now, we looked upon, how the students and teachers looked upon writing as a product. And students don't understand the feedback. No, I think if it is given, if it is given clearly. So what are the factors that affect these responses to feedback? Okay, one could be, one very important factor is the learner's language proficiency. So you can see clearly that lower levels, learners at a lower level of proficiency may not have such an intensive or deeply processed linguistic knowledge base to draw upon. And so direct feedback is likely to be of more benefit to them. Not just proficiency, but learners' language analytic ability and previous level of grammar instruction are also very important factors. And learners with better analytic ability benefit more from direct feedback, but it is expected that they would benefit even more from indirect feedback, which requires some use of that kind of an ability. So learners with little or no knowledge may be expected to benefit more from direct feedback. Okay, then we come to peer review. Okay. As seen, the teacher's response to students' writing is a significant technique in developing the writing process. However, it is often the case that teachers respond, evaluate, and edit the student's paper at the last stage. So this might lead to failure in writing assignments because students might be under the impression that nothing more needs to be done with their text. And so the students, because we're not doing this as part of our formative assessment in most contexts. Okay? And so they might be deprived of the initiative of either adopting or declining the revisions. Peer review, on the other hand, can help because it gives students more options to consider when they revise their papers. It is simply putting students together in groups and then having each student read and react to the strengths and weaknesses of each other's papers. Okay? Peer review generates and receives different points of view, and thus it raises awareness. Okay, so the advantages you can see are that it encourages learner autonomy, it supports collaborative learning. Okay, which brings us to okay. As technology continues to advance, so does the opportunity to provide feedback via different modes. The use of technology in the classroom, both in face-to-face and online environments, is becoming inescapable. While that has some downsides, the good news is that you can leverage these tools to help students. Many sites and online tools offer help with providing feedback to learners. In fact, the number of choices can be overwhelming. Audio feedback can be given in many different ways. It can be given in even just through your phone. You can even record your voice with the Windows voice recorder and send it to your students. And if you don't really care for all these applications and want something hassle-free and entirely web-based, then you can try the online voice recorder or Walkaroo. There is, voice recorder is completely free. You just, it can be used right on your browser. It allows you to record your voice using a microphone and save it as an MP3 file. The Skyzena, which is an audio tool for providing feedback on written documents. You can highlight any section of the document, record, and provide your feedback. It works best with Google Drive. But something that I have found very useful is the Microsoft Office. The Microsoft Office has a very useful feature that is of immense help in giving feedback. You may have to grade a lot of papers with extensive formatting, outline, or grammatical concerns. Embedded comments and track changes will do the trick. So the words track changes and compare documents features are fantastic tools for language teachers when it comes to error corrections and feedback. Track changes has several customizable features, including color coding. You click on the review tab in a Word document, and you will see this in the middle on the top. And The usual comment feature also can help add notes to text, just like we do on a piece of paper. You can walk your students through all your concerns and show them exactly how to do something or what it should look like. Okay. So I would like to just give you, most of you must be aware of this, but this would be a great help for teachers who haven't yet used this for their feedback. Okay. So you just go to the review tab and go to tracking and select track changes. So when track changes is on, the deletions are marked with a strike through and additions are marked with an underline. When it is off, word stops tracking changes, but the colored underlines and strike throughs from your changes remain in the document until they are accepted or rejected. Okay. Then you have the show or hide comments or track changes. It displays all changes in line. On the review tab, you go to tracking and you select show markup, and then you point to balloons and select show all revisions in line. Okay, you can change the display to show comments in line, and all deletions will excuse me, strike through instead of inside balloons. So that's a choice you can make. You can have balloons or you can just go for comments. Okay. Then you have display changes by type of edit or reviewer, where you go to the review tab, go to tracking and select show markup, and you select the type of change that you want to display. For example, you can select comments, insertions, deletions, or formatting. Then you check mark the next to the item, indicating that that item is selected. So this is what it will look like. So you can opt for either comments, insertions and deletions, formatting, or you can opt for balloons and so on. Okay. Then you have you can go to display changes and comments for specific reviewers, where an editor or a reviewer usually wants to view a document as it will appear after their changes are incorporated. I will show you in my samples how these changes can be incorporated. So this procedure gives the editor or reviewer the opportunity to see how the document will look in the changes. Okay. So you go to review tracking and you the display for review, you choose the option you want, and for a detailed view of the change, you choose all markup. And for a preview of how the document will look if you make all the suggested changes permanent, you choose no markup, and so on. Then you can also choose the option, simple markup. For a detailed view of the changes, you can choose all markup, as I said. And if you want to view the original document, as if all the suggested changes, with all the suggested changes removed, then you choose the original. You can also hide changes. You can hide the track changes and comments while printing. It does not remove the changes from the document. And to remove the markup from your document, you then say accept or reject commands in the changes in the pane, in the reviewing pane. And if you want to review a summary of the track changes, you can use the reviewing pane. You can quickly ensure that the track changes have been removed from your document. And the summary section at the top of the reviewing panel displays the exact number of track changes. And so you will have like 71 changes in this, or 80 changes, or 50 changes, and so on. And each change will come up in a review pane. So you can go to the review tab, go to tracking, and select the reviewing pane. And to view the summary. To view the summary at the side of your screen, you select the reviewing pane vertical. And if you want to review the summary across the bottom of your screen, then you select reviewing pane horizontal. So by default, the reviewing pane shows at the top how many total divisions are there in the document. So you can see this here. Okay. Yeah, it will show there 17 divisions, so many insertions, so many deletions, so many moves, so much formatting, and so many comments, and so on. Okay. And if you have to review each track change in sequence, then click or tap at the beginning of the document, and on the review tab, you go to changes. You select accept or reject, and as you accept or reject changes, then Word moves to the next change. Okay. And if you have to accept all changes at the same time, you go to review changes. And you accept all changes, or you accept all changes and stop tracking. Okay. So if you have to delete comments, again, you go to the review tab, you go to comments and select delete. Okay. So I would like, but let's first look at the strategies, and I would like to go and show you the document after tracking changes and before. Okay. But let's look at some more strategies first. When you're looking at strategies, you know, higher order concerns are typically conceptual and structural. So you're looking at whether the ideas in the paper make sense, or are the claims supported with evidence, or do the paragraphs follow a logical order? And lower order concerns have less to do with meaning than with correctness, that is grammar and style and formatting. So drawing connections between, then you move to drawing connections between the big picture and the detail. So one common approach to commenting on student work is to offer praise, criticism, and questions in the margins of a paper, and then to provide a more general overview of what the paper does well and what it does poorly in a head note or a footnote or an end note. Okay. So ideally, this method should allow students to understand not only the paper's strengths and weaknesses, but also where specific examples of the text occur. Okay. So the next thing we need to look at is rubrics. A rubric serves two purposes in responding to students' writing. It explicitly communicates performance indicators and expectations and criteria for success to your students, as well as providing everyone with a shared language for measuring success on a given assignment. So well-developed rubrics allow you to avoid writing out the same comments over and over on multiple students' work. So there are basically two types of rubric, analytic and holistic, which the previous speaker, Joel, also touched upon. So an analytic rubric divides student work into component parts that are tasks that make up the whole, or individual criteria such as ideas, organization, voice, mechanics, etc., with descriptions of what a high, a mid, and a low level quality of work looks like for each component. So for example, you have these analytic rubric, they take the form of a table, and most standardized tests follow the analytic rubric. For example, TOEFL, IELTS, and so on. Okay. Whereas on the other hand, a holistic rubric provides guidelines for various levels of achievement in the work overall, and rather than by categories, tasks, or component parts. Okay. A holistic rubric is often structured as a commenting form with sentence or paragraph length descriptions of different levels of competencies rather than a table. Next, you could, go to face-to-face conversation where you talk to students about their papers in person, which is a very efficient way to convey your thoughts about their work and to be sure they understand what you said, because you can speak more quickly than you can write, and because it provides your students an immediate opportunity to ask you questions about your feedback, reducing the chances of misinterpretation. Next, screencasting is if you like the idea of speaking to your students rather than writing to them, but are unable to meet with each of them in person, then you might try conveying your comments via screencasts, which allow teachers to talk through a paper with a student, creating a video that scrolls through the student's paper online while recording the teacher's audio comments about the paper. So it is almost like a face-to-face meeting because it lets you speak to your students directly, which allows for greater speed in communicating ideas and clearer transmission in the tone of voice. Next, you can tone. This is one of the, I think, one of the most important aspects of feedback, because it is more than what you say, how you say that matters. So students like to feel that their teachers are interested in what they say and how they say it. So cultivating a conversational tone and indicating that you understand and appreciate what the student attempted to accomplish, whether or not the student actually achieved his or her goals, can go a long way towards helping the students to accept your feedback rather than responding defensively. I think we are running out of time, so let me quickly go through a few more effective strategies to foster motivation. So before you start to worry about the feedback technique itself, what is very important is to keep in mind that students will get more engaged in what they are writing if they can write about a topic that they like. And so let them choose the topic whenever it is possible, so they have some ownership in the process. And then you provide grading criteria. Grading criteria beforehand. You can, like as we talked about the analytic and holistic rubrics, in that way you can tell them beforehand what is expected of them. And you consider writing as a process and not a product. We've gone through that. And you make students write inside the classroom. Okay, it's easy to give them assignments and ask them to write at home, but it is more fruitful if you can often make students write inside the classroom, because they are more willing to accept corrections when they are creating their piece of writing rather than after they have finished it. So you can focus on, one or two essential errors depending on their learning goals. Otherwise, you'll not be able to talk to all the students. Okay, so reducing the feedback workload is to recognize when instructional feedback is called for. Sometimes written feedback is not the best or most effective strategy for improving students' learning. When you see significant errors common to many students' responses, then it would be more appropriate to correct these errors through reteaching. And this is what is called as instructional feedback. Okay. And let's remember that a red mark on the notebook or exam paper means a mistake and something students hate to see. But teachers too are not very keen to use the color, because the color red has a lasting negative impact. The brain associates the color red with mistakes and danger, and it stays with one through the years. So in writing workshops and training sessions, it is being advocated that teachers use any other color but red for correction. So writing should be enjoyed by students, so we focus the written tasks on their fields of interest as often as we can. We help them inside the classroom while they are working on drafts, and providing them with checklists will stop a good deal of mistakes from being part of students' writings. So feedback on writing should be flexible, closely related to the type of text, and it should be a joint responsibility between the teacher and the learners. I'd like to show you one more example, which I just showed. Yeah. Now, if I took this document, and you can see the errors there, and if I went to review here, okay, and went to track changes, okay, and said accept changes, okay, track changes and accept changes. I'm not able to do it here. Okay. Accept all changes. Okay. So you can see that all the changes are accepted here. Okay. So let's look at another example that I just showed you about focused and unfocused feedback. Yeah. Okay. Here again, is this visible? Is this visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
Yes,
let's again go to review here, and you can see that all these changes, again, you go to track changes. Okay. And go to accept changes. You accept all changes, and you can see that all your feedback has been accepted by the students. So for students also, it is a very helpful feature, and I'm sure if you haven't been using it, you will start using it. It is of great help. Yeah. I'm afraid do I have time, Dr. Bhavani? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Do I have time?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Continue. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So then let's quickly move on to speak. Okay. Yeah. I will rush through this because I don't think I have too much time. But yes, when we talk of speaking broadly, we can classify our activities that we give our students into two kinds: activities that are intended to develop accuracy, and activities that are intended to develop fluency. Okay, where there is some sort of an outcome that is non-linguistic when you are talking about activities that develop fluency, and there is some interaction between learners. Okay. So what are our learning outcomes? You know, there is some interaction between learners, and the learning outcomes for these activities focused on fluency are gains in self-confidence and motivation, gains in automized language production, opportunities to experiment with the full range of linguistic resources at the learner's disposal, opportunities to learn from the language of other learners, and opportunities to obtain feedback from other learners. Okay. what are the conditions under which benefits can be realized? Okay, so the benefits can be realized at the very least. It is important to see that students speak a lot, and next, they push themselves to use language at the upper range of their ability. Okay? And the most important condition, I would say, is that they are provided corrective and non-corrective feedback from teachers. Okay, what we mean by non-corrective feedback is that, you know, it could even include praise. Okay, so let's quickly look at, yeah. So accuracy and fluency. Fluency, as we said, includes the capacity to use language in real time, to emphasize meanings, possibly draw on more lexicalized, systems, and to emphasize meanings, and the ability to get across communicative intent without too much hesitation and too many pauses to cause barriers or a breakdown of communication. And accuracy, of course, includes the ability to avoid error in performance, and it reflects higher levels of control in the language, as well as a conservative orientation. So it means that the student, the learner, avoids any challenging structure that might provoke error. But as a result, what happens is they tend to speak less, okay, because of the fear of committing errors, okay? So when we assign accuracy and fluency exercises, it is always better to assign exercises that need knowledge with which students are familiar. Again, as with writing, at the beginning stages, it is always better to give students a choice of the topics on which they want to speak. Because it is found that if a personal task which is based on information that is well known to learners allows them to be more fluent in their performance. And for another, we had better give students more planning time. With regards to planning, I know in classes, we have often language lab sessions that may range for 1 hour to maybe 3 hours. But a majority of the time is better allocated for planning. So it has been suggested that providing learners with planning time prior to conducting the task helps learners be more fluent and come up with more complex language. Okay. So now the key decisions that the teachers need to make about feedback is when to give feedback, how to give feedback, and what kind of feedback to give. Okay. So it has been suggested that that students want to be corrected. You know, most adult learners in educational context expect their errors to be corrected, and they appreciate it when it takes place. Okay. And if students believe that their learning will be more effective when their errors are corrected, then there may be a strong case for providing more feedback of that kind, of whichever kind you're providing. Okay. So the next decision that has to be made is, how to give feedback, what kind of feedback. And if they respond positively, then they believe that feedback concerns language that is about their level of confidence. If they feel that the feedback is above their level, then it is unlikely to be motivating. Okay. Which brings us to feedback, should it be immediate or delayed? In speaking tasks, okay, teachers have differing differing opinions about whether it should be immediate or delayed, because there are advantages to both. So it is not uncommon to delay all or most feedback until the end of a fluency-based activity. And such as approach is often supported. So a frequent procedure is that teachers keep a note of the language items which and they later select from this record and then they discuss it. Okay. The teachers might choose to give positive, non-corrective feedback on the content of the students' discussion, as well as highlighting examples of accurate and appropriate language use before focusing on errors. So remember, especially when it comes to feedback on speaking, feedback always starts with praise, okay? Because every student would have definitely done something praiseworthy. And then you move to constructive criticism. Okay. So they might, okay. Then what techniques should the teacher use? Okay, let's look at, let's look at which errors should the teacher correct, okay? It is clearly neither practicable nor desirable for teachers to provide corrective feedback on every error that is produced in fluency-based activity. Okay, so we have to look at the different kinds of errors here. They are commonly categorized into errors in performance, which are caused by time pressure, or competing attentional resources, like which we have already looked up as mistakes or slips. And then there might be errors which are caused by a lack of knowledge or misapplication of knowledge. So when selecting which errors to focus on in feedback, it is suggested that teachers should focus on performance errors, since these brief interventions of corrective feedback are more suited to dealing with performance errors. Okay. Another alternative is to look at the communicative effect of the error rather than its cause. It makes sense to give feedback on errors which affect overall sentence organization and impede comprehension. Okay. Communication problems, however, are more likely to be caused by vocabulary and pronunciation issues. So there might be a strong case for focusing on these more than on grammar. Okay. So what techniques can the teacher use? Okay. Let's quickly look at implicit or explicit techniques. Okay, and what we mean by implicit and techniques and explicit. Okay, so in implicit, you can have a prompt, which is a clarification request. Like for example, if the student said they know win a lot, then the teacher could say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. Okay, that would be a prompt. Okay, she or he is not pointing directly to the error. Or it could be a reformulation, a simple reformulation, like they know win a lot. Okay, they don't earn a lot. Okay, that's implicit feedback, but it's a reformulation. Okay. Or there could be a prompt which is a repetition, and if the student said they know earn a lot, then the teacher stress no. They know earn a lot, and with a rising intonation, or maybe using a hand gesture, making a facial expression while saying no to indicate that there is a problem there. Or it could be explicit, where now they know earn a lot, then the teacher says they earn a lot, no earn, no, and Yeah. Or there could be reformulation where there is an explicit correction, where they say they know earn a lot, and the teacher says directly, you need to say they don't earn a lot, and then stresses that that is the negative form. So, or there could be a prompt again, which is a metalinguistic clue, where the student says they don't earn a lot, and the teacher says negative form. Okay. Or a reformulation, which is again an explicit correction with metalinguistic clue, and they know earn a lot, and the teacher says, remember, you need don't to make the negative. They don't earn a lot. So depending on the proficiency and the level of the learner is, you choose your feedback technique. Okay. Or it could be just a clarification request, like which is indicated by the teacher that the utterance has not been understood, like sorry, or excuse me, or pardon me. Okay. So you can see that implicit feedback minimizes anxiety and builds students' confidence. Okay. Including positive feedback. You must understand that we understand in another language, especially for lower level learners, is stressful. Putting them under intense pressure. In addition to the demands of finding things to say, ideas, and finding ways of saying them in comprehensible English in real time with limited resources, students must deal with the fact that they must do this in public, in front of a class, okay, in front of others, their peers, their teachers, who may be judging how well they perform. So the potential for debilitating anxiety about loss of face can be huge, especially for shy learners. So corrective feedback from the teacher that highlights their mistakes can make things worse. Okay. So the negative effects of anxiety on language learning has just been talked about by the previous speaker, Mr. Joel. Okay, so it's very important that we aim to lower the affective filter of our learners. And it is only then that potential learning benefits can clearly be realized. Okay. Then there is peer correction, of course, which is again a very good opportunity to learn from others in the processes of clarification, rephrasing, and confirmation. So I would suggest every time there is a speaking activity, a speaking task given to learners, after the learner has finished speaking, it is a good idea to invite feedback from peers. Okay, so the giving of feedback is also a skill that our learners can learn. Okay, so you first get them to give feedback, and then the teacher gives feedback. So again, this is again a few questions for both students and teachers. When you make a mistake in class, you think it's good or bad if the teacher ignores it, doesn't correct it at all? I am not able to view the chat here. Yeah. Yeah. Or indicates there is a mistake, but doesn't actually tell you what's wrong. So you have to work it out for yourself. Okay. Yeah. Bad. Says what is wrong and tells you what the right version is. It should be corrected. Okay. Yeah. Bad. Says what was wrong and gets you to say the correct version yourself. Yes. Should be corrected. or says what was wrong and gets someone else to say the correct version. Partially good, okay? Should be corrected, I can see that, yeah? Okay, yeah. Or explains why it was wrong and then tells you what the rule is. That something went wrong, feedback, links, not, okay. So should be corrected, okay? Okay. Then there are some other strategies, again, that are, of course, using praise. Very important. Praising students for good performance is believed to increase motivation and foster positive attitudes to learning. And praise is more effective when it is specific. You cannot just say good job. You have to say what is good and what can be better, okay? Highlighting the accurate and appropriate language use rather than indicating errors, okay? Adopting a supportive manner, encouraging positive feedback from peers and showing an interest in the importance of positive constructive feedback, such as, for example, yeah, that's a really great start, but perhaps you could do this, or you are on the right track, but you're not quite there yet, or that's a very good idea. How about more development? Or can anyone add to what Dash has just said to help us get to the right answer? Or I like your suggestion, or can you tell me more about how you figured that out, or how did you arrive at your answer? Or do you remember how we did it last time? Or have another think about that one, or did you think about, okay, which brings me to the end about using technology. It is difficult to evaluate verbal presentation skills using written feedback alone. So with digital tools, you can record their presentations, or you can have students record themselves and then use screencasting software to insert your feedback. Or besides pointing out content errors, you can use the software to show students when they are repeatedly using fillers like how many, fillers they are using per sentence sometimes, okay? And you can also use the recordings to show them their body language, like if they are putting their hands in their pocket, or they're rolling their eyes, or, all the other gestures that they are making, okay? So a fluency-based task is first and foremost an opportunity for learners to participate in extended speaking. And decisions made by teachers about whether or not and how to give feedback usually have to be made in the heat of the moment. Errors may occur, but they are opportunities for learning. And even when a teacher's approach to feedback seems to be effective, little will be lost from experimenting with something new. Okay. So lots of students are afraid of making mistakes. So as teachers, we have to let our students know that it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are making, they're a part of the process of learning. So we must make it clear to students when the focus of the activity is to get it right. Okay. So I think I have used up all and more of my time. I'm sorry about that. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, and I hope there are some takeaways. Thank you all.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Meena. A question and answer sessions we will go. We'll go for a question and answer session.
Yeah.
See in the chat box, Meena. Meenakshi madam, please see in the chat box. Questions.
Yes. Yeah, I can see one question here which says, can you kindly suggest any strategy to correct children with the MTI influence? Yes. I'd suggest my students to listen to a lot of not necessarily native language speakers, but they can, they can model their language on our Indian news readers. There are the news readers, and there are even watching films, English films, and watching TV serials, I'm sure helps a lot. However, today we are talking of world Englishes. So we need not lay so much stress on, acquiring native speaker accents. Okay. So, yeah. I got another question here. Does direct feedback suggest us to helpful, or indirect is good at teaching? What's your votes? Yeah, I think that again depends on the proficiency of your learners, the level of their language skills. So indirect feedback gives rise to more autonomous learning, and so it helps them learn how to learn. So indirect feedback actually is very helpful in the, you can tailor your prompts and your reformulations in such a way that it is not too direct. Yeah. Yes.
Good evening, madam.
Yes.
So
yes.
This is Ravindranath from Dr. V.S. Krishna College, Visakhapatnam.
Yeah.
So I would like to give my feedback on your feedback talk.
Please.
So I have attended many webinars recently in the lockdown period.
Yeah.
But the topic you have chosen is very, very novel, interesting, and illuminating, ma'am. So very good. Thank you very much. And one more thing, regarding written feedback, I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
Is it necessary on the part of the teacher to give written feedback to every similar mistake a student makes? For example, a student begins a sentence with a small letter every time, or uses V1 form even with the third person singular subject.
Yeah.
Shall we have to correct every time?
No, sir, that is just what I said. When I talked about focused and unfocused feedback, that is specifically what I meant. If you went about correcting every error the student made, now, as you said, some students have problems with mechanics. So they do not capitalize their words. And that is a repetitive thing. So you cannot keep on pointing that out. So imagine their whole page would be full of red marks.
Yes, ma'am. So one more thing.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
For overcrowded classes, so where the strength of the class is more than 100 plus, is it possible to give written feedback to each and every student every time?
Yeah, time is a major factor there. But you can point every student to the kind of errors he or she is making, and then let them take on from there. You can just point them. You cannot correct every error of every student, sir, as you say.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
It is a wonderful session indeed.
Thank you very much, sir.
So,
good evening, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Am I audible, madam? Good evening, madam.
Yes, you are. Yes, sir.
I would like to add something to Ravindranath.
Please.
So I have attended nearly 60 webinars related to different aspects of English literature and language. I am A. Srinivas Babu, Vice Principal and Head of the Department of English, Gayatri College of Science and Management, Srikakulam, madam. I am very much delighted. At the same time, I am very much thankful to the college organizers. They have taken a wonderful sessions and organized well. What I have found is uniqueness is there, and your presentation, you continuously present the things in a lucid manner. So I noted each and every point, madam, because everything is good. And Ravindranath said and asked some questions. Actually, I wanted to ask the same questions. Another point is, madam, for what extent we give importance to grammar regarding written communication and oral communication. Regarding oral communication, if it is intelligible, it's okay. And we need not give that much of importance for grammar. Actually, this is a question to the earlier speaker, but I didn't get a chance. So you two well versed with all the fields. That's why let me know that. At the same time, another point is regarding accent also. We people influence many of the students with our pronunciation. We don't want to understand the capacity and level of understanding of the student. That's the most important point we have to consider as teachers, ideal teachers. We have to understand whatever the students say, we have to accept first, madam. But we have to say that you have to say like this, but the student is unable to say. First, as far as your feedback system is concerned, you have mentioned all the things. How can we do the things and how to draw the attention of the student and how to make ourselves effectively. Regarding if any mistakes are there, if any student raises a point in the classroom, we are ready to accept, madam. But how many teachers are ready to accept this? Because we are all the teachers, we may not know something, but the students may be familiar with some of the words, all these things. Please suggest something. Thank you very much. And organizers, I very much thankful to the organizers also.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, as you say, we are more concerned. I think we are concerned with grammar is a little extreme. Okay, we should pay attention to errors that hinder comprehension and communication. If they are able to get their message across, so let us just focus on fluency first, because you see some of the students who come from vernacular medium background have great ideas, and they speak, their content is so much better than some learners who are more proficient in language. So we have to give it to them. We have to give credit for their ideas and their content. So, and at the same time, help them overcome those problems with language, with errors, with grammar.
Okay, Meenakshi madam. Okay, Meenakshi madam. Is Durgaratnam is ready? Hello?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Please, our gratitude session for you, Meena. It's a gracious for us to have you. Please, Durgaratnam, please carry on.
Thank you, Bhavani madam. I'm most privileged to offer my gratitude to Dr. Meenakshi Barad Sirigiri, madam, who provided an excellent presentation on administering feedback for effective language learning. Feedback is essential for the language improvement, and this session covers about different factors which cause errors in the language, minimizing the learning gap by moving from error prevention to error correction, different types of feedback which can be used depending upon the student we are dealing with. It introduced different web tools which can be used for the feedback. The review option in the Microsoft Office for tracking changes will definitely of help to us. Technology to be used as a means to provide feedback, using the correct tone under the strategies which will make the student accept the feedback. Avoiding the use of red color while giving the feedback, as it imparts negativity for a long time. Practice leads to accuracy and fluency, which enhance smooth communication. Once again, on behalf of VSM College, I thank Dr. Meenakshi Barad Sirigiri madam for sparing her precious time and sharing her knowledge with us. Thank you so much, madam. Over to Bhavani madam for further instructions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Durgaratnam madam. It's very nice, Meenakshi, for you to be with us, and all the participants, they enjoyed you. Please be with us. On behalf of management, we are going to have Dr. Jeevan Sri madam to pay the vote of thanks. Madam, Dr. Jeevan Sri madam. Dr. Jeevan Sri madam.
Hi, good evening, Bhavani madam. Thanks a lot. Good evening to all, and good morning to some delegates who are in other countries. I am Dr. D. Jeevanasri, reader in Sanskrit, VSM College, RAMACHANDRAPURAM. It is my privilege to express thanks to distinguished dignitaries on this international webinar platform. At the outset, my sincere thanks to our Honorable President and Correspondent, Sri Merla Narayan Murthy Garu, who gave such an opportunity to English Department to conduct the international webinar. My special thanks to our respected Academic Director, Sri MSN Murthy Garu, and my heartfelt thanks to our beloved Director, Srimati N. Meenakshi Garu, for their extending support in conducting the webinar. My thanks are also to our young and dynamic principal, Sri NSV Kiran Kumar Garu, for his cooperation throughout the program. My special thanks to Dr. B. Bhavani Garu, Organizing Secretary, Head of the English Department, for making this platform on behalf of our institute during this pandemic. I express my sincere thanks to all our resource persons, Dr. M. Nagaraju sir, Dr. Amita Ruth madam, Mr. Joel Volkert sir, Dr. Meenakshi Barad madam, who has given their kind consent, our invitation, and delivered their lectures. It is a memorable day in the history of our college for hosting the international webinar. More than 1,000 participants and around 100 colleges and universities participated in this webinar and made it a grand success. My vote of thanks to all respected representatives who have blessed us with their presence. I also thank the organizing staff members of our college. Last but not the least, I would like to say special thanks to our technical supporter, Mr. B. Subramaniam. Finally, I once again thank the college management and principal for providing this opportunity. Thank you, one and all. Over to Bhavani madam.
Thank you, Jeevansri madam. And concluding words I want to give for all the participants. Please wait a minute. When the world is running down, I think we are making the best of what's still around. When the world is running down, I think we are making the best of what's still around. We should embrace one good slogan in this time to have a positive impact on us. That is, that which does not kill us makes us stronger. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. So this pandemic is making us so stronger. So all of you, a small note, feedback link is provided in the chat box and is also in YouTube comment section. It is also in the YouTube comment section, and you will receive your e-certificate within 3 days. And you are going to receive your e-certificate within 3 days. Please check in your spam. And this feedback will also get posted to you for your mail IDs by today's night. Thanks you once again joining us. Padma Priya madam, you want to talk something? Padma Priya madam, you are going to have any feedback for us?
Hi, Bhavani ma'am, I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible, ma'am.
Yeah, good evening to one and all, and a warm good morning to Mr. Joel Volkert. Thank you, my dear friend Bhavani madam, for giving me this opportunity to sum up this evening session on behalf of all the participants present here virtually. As we all know, there are two facets for every coin. I personally feel that even this pandemic has created some new dimensions. One is the minimalistic lifestyle, and the other one is teaching learning opportunities, new perspectives for the academicians, and also opportunities for refreshing our knowledge. The webinars are very much instrumental to learn and to refresh. The two-day webinar by VSM College, RAMACHANDRAPURAM on the topic English language teaching, basic principles and future direction was one of its kind. Mr. Joel Volkert's session focused on two important aspects of language teaching and learning. Joel's presentation is very much lively, illustrative, and interactive. It highlighted the fluency, about the fluency, factors influencing fluency, speaking abilities, listening strategies, language acquisition, academic vocabulary, effective fillers, goal setting, and so on. Mr. Joel emphasized the importance of practice. Yeah, practice makes man perfect. The teaching learning tips are very useful given by him. My takeaways from Joel's presentation are daily discussion topic. I think it would be really useful in a teaching learning scenario. And the second one is creating a personal dictionary. Thank you, Mr. Joel Volkert, for an excellent session. The second session of this evening was by Dr.Meenakshi Barad. Her presentation is on administering feedback for effective language learning. Her presentation highlighted the various aspects of learning a second language. Dr. Meenakshi talked about mistakes, slips, errors, L1 influence, interference, and writing process. Dr. Meenakshi ma'am, it's an exclusively informative session on feedback and various types of feedback. Thank you, ma'am, for introducing various web tools for taking feedback and effective classroom strategies. So once again, I profusely thank Mr. Joel Volkert and Ms. Dr. Meenakshi Barad, the resource persons, the eminent resource persons of this evening. On behalf of all the participants, I also thank my dear friend, Dr. Bhavani ma'am, for arranging this two-day webinar. I sincerely thank the management and the team VSM RAMACHANDRAPURAM. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over to Bhavani ma'am.
Thank you, Padmapriya madam. We are very thankful for all of us. Your presence, all of your presence makes us so immensely happy. Immensely, we are happy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Thank you once again, Meenakshi. It's a happy night for you.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
all
Thank
of
you.
You can have your feedback forms to your mail IDs also. You can find in the spam box and in your mail IDs tonight. Thank you, Meenakshi. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.